Huang Yueli's wrist roused and without stopped, another whip was struck out. Tell me if I dare to or not. POW. 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 One lash after another, Huang Yueli continuously struck without stopping. The method that Huang Yueli struck was extremely vicious. She specially struck the extremely painful positions. Just a few lashes and Moying was already rolling around in pain, her tears kept flowing. However, Moying's feet were clasped tightly by Huang Yueli's trap, held tightly by the iron chain. There was no way to struggle free, so she could only roll around with no escape route. You be ******H. How dare you treat me in this way? My father will never let you off. Help, help. Fifth brother, save me. Woo woo woo, Miss Yu Li, I'm in the wrong, please let me off. Moying couldn't stop screeching. Initially she used her status in an attempt to press Huang Yueli, but when she realized she didn't even bother about this, she attempted to look for Luo Jiyun for help. However, Luo Jiyun had entered the tent to look after Li Moying, so he didn't pay any attention to this area. Besides that, this array was soundproof, so her cries for help did not reach him. After that, she finally gave up and couldn't care less about her face and continued to ask for mercy. Huang Yueli sneered, "Stop using your father to scare me, I'm educating his daughter a lesson. Obstinate, conceited, self-centered, full of malicious schemes, but yet you don't have the equivalent ability and discernment, you deserve a lesson. Today I will let you know that no matter who makes a mistake, that person deserves to pay the price. Help, help." Huang Yueli lashed out viciously, but she managed to do it in a way where she didn't faint. Moying could only continue to struggle, bloodstains appeared everywhere on her entire body, her clothes were shredded to pieces, almost unable to cover up. Just at this moment, the sky echoed a weird sound. It sounded like the wind, like the sound of some huge flying magical beast flapping its wings. Following that was the appearance of a large shadow. The rays above were slowly dimmed as if something was blocking the sky. Huang Yueli sensed this strange predicament, stopped whipping and looked up. She only saw that afar was a huge flying ship of at least over 10 meters, flying steadily towards their direction. Flying ship was a commonly seen flying profound artifact of at least 8 tier and above. The construction was vast and generally required a few armament masters of 8 tier and above to work together for a duration of at least a year or more before its completion. This type of flying ship was absolutely not something that commoners could use. Even among the 9th degree realm top practitioners, there were few who had the fortunes. Generally, it would be those big sects who had accumulated the fortunes for several thousands of years before they could afford a few fleets. And generally only when the sect master or elderly seniors set off on a long journey, then will it be used. Upon hearing the noise, Luo Jiyun excitedly ran out and used all his might to wave his hands towards the direction of the flying ship. The people on board the ship had apparently seen him and slowly descended towards the empty field in front of the profound lunar jade mine. Huang Yueli raised her brows, and in her heart, she had already some understanding. From the looks of it, this flying ship was from the sect that Li Moying belonged to. It should be here to receive him. Outside the array, Luo Jiyun's face was filled with smiles as he stood out to receive them. "This is great, Brother Mo Yi, senior brother should be fine. We are really lucky today. The profound lunar spirit mirror that sister-in-law refined is effective and looks like senior brother is going to regain his consciousness anytime soon. Now the someone from the sect has arrived, we can take the flying ship back immediately. This time, there shouldn't be any more problems. You can also listen on." Mo Yi heard Luo Jiyun, but his reaction wasn't as enthusiastic. Instead he frowned. He didn't know if he had thought too deeply, but Mo Yi had the feeling that things wouldn't be as smooth as what Luo Jiyun thought. He simply replied, "Young Master Luo, let's go over and take a look." The flying ship stopped steadily in front of them and a flight of stairs slowly descended. A pack of people walked out from the ship. The minute he saw the leader of the pack, Luo Jiyun's expression fell. Why is it him?" he murmured in a low voice, but unknowingly the other party heard him. The leader of the pack curled up his lips and said, "Fifth junior brother, what is it? You don't seem to be too happy to see me. Don't you know how to greet me? Or could it be that after you've gone out on a journey with senior brother, You have forgotten how to spell the word courtesy. Luo Jiyun was extremely unhappy with his sarcastic words, but he didn't dare to defy him. He could only lower his head as he walked over and greeted him. Second senior brother, long time no see. Why did you come over today? The man who was known as second senior brother by Luo Jiyun looked refined and handsome. The long green robe that he was wearing gave out an elegant and graceful feel and some delicateness. If one had not known the truth, they would never have thought that he was an extremely powerful practitioner. His voice was soft, and when he talked, his tone was gentle. He was the total opposite of Li Moying, who gave out a pressurizing feel with just a glance. Even so, Luo Jiyun, Mo Yi and the rest did not dare to slight him. That man looked deeply at Luo Jiyun and said, "Fifth junior brother. You don't welcome me?" No, it's just that. I heard from the elders that you had gone to Sky Emperor City to gain experience and you had the intention to sign up for some competition, so I thought you would be gone for quite some time. Too bad, I've let you down. Something happened to senior brother, so no matter what, I should make this trip down personally. What's more, the annual Sect competition is about to start, so teacher and the rest are very busy. How could they be alarmed by such a small matter? So naturally, I'm the only one who can come over. Luo Jiyun was wailing bitterly in his heart and felt that he was super unlucky. After Li Moying fainted, he hurriedly sent out a SOS order to the sect. This special tablet could only be used once, and only the core disciples would bring it with them. Usually, only when they met with a life and death situation then would this be used. Once the sect received this safety call for help, they would immediately send out their elders for assistance. Li Moying had one tablet with him, and his carried the most weight. This was because he carried with him the entire sect's expectations, so if he were to fall into trouble, it was natural that the sect master would personally come forward to rescue him. Luo Jiyun had thought it would be a certain elder, or even their teacher. Who knew, the person who came was the second senior brother, who was most disagreeable with Li Moying. This was the weirdest part. Where on earth did he receive their rescue order? And how did he manage to convince the sect's elders to allow him to bring his force to come forward? Even so, Luo Jiyun didn't dare to express his thoughts. Second senior brother, listen to what you're saying. Of course it's great that you came. The man opened his eyelids and his handsome face expression a gentle smile. What exactly happened to senior brother? This seems to be the first time he sent out a rescue order to the sect. To think that with his ability, he still requested for help, so the trouble he has met with must not be something small. You can also listen on. Momentarily, Luo Jiyun didn't know where to start from and started hemming and hawing. Yes. We met with a bit of trouble. His thoughts kept swirling around. Li Moying and this second senior brother, Li Lingchuan, had never been able to get along, with plenty of tussles between the two of them. Li Lingchuan had chosen to appear at this timing, and since no one knew his motive, should he tell the truth about Li Moying's current condition? But if he didn't say and delayed Li Moying's condition, it would result in serious consequences. If he were to tell, how much should he reveal? Just as Luo Jiyun was hesitating, Li Lingchuan was already looking in the direction behind him. I never thought that senior brother would send out the rescue order since his subordinates are around. It seems that things are not as simple as I thought. Let me guess, could it be that senior brother's illness has acted up again? Luo Jiyun had not expected him to make an accurate guess, so he was dumbstruck. However, silence means consent. Li Lingchuan's lips curled into a smile and he continued, it's not the first time senior brother had left the sect for such a long period of time. His symptoms acting up doesn't seem that often, but this round, obviously there's a reason for it. Let me guess, was senior brother surrounded by magical beasts in the Dark Moon Forest and sustained some serious injury? Luo Jiyun remained silent. Although Li Lingchuan's innate skill was not as deep as Li Moying, he had always been shrewd and deep. People like him were often smarter than the straightforward person like Luo Jiyun. He only needed to observe the actions and tone and he could roughly guess the situation. It was impossible for Luo Jiyun to play mind games with him. Li Lingchuan looked at his expression and knew he was right, so he smiled and continued, what's the matter? Fifth junior brother, why won't you say a word? Did I guess wrongly? Senior brother is actually fine. Why won't he come out and meet me then? Senior brother is. What happened to him? Has he remained unconscious ever since his symptoms acted up? It's best that you explain the situation to me clearly, otherwise. I don't know how I can help you. Luo Jiun took a deep breath and he knew he could not hide Li Moying's condition any further, so he could only briefly brush through it. Second senior brother, your guess is correct. Senior brother had indeed gotten into an accident and sustained some injuries. Subsequently, his illness acted up until now he has yet to come around. I'm a bit worried, so I used the safety order. Li Lingchuan's expression was unfathomable as he stretched out his hand and patted Luo Jiun on his shoulder. I see, what's there to hide? In this case, senior brother is still inside the tent. Let me go in and take a look. Saying that, Li Lingchuan took a few big strides past Luo Jiun and proceeded into the tent. Luo Jiun frowned with an unsettling feeling in his heart as he turned back and looked at Mo Yi. Mo Yi shook his head at him and said, Young Master Luo, don't worry. Although Master has yet to wake up, but no one can hurt him. What's more, not everyone on the flying ship are young Master Li's men. Unless he kills all of us, otherwise, he wouldn't dare to take action under so many pairs of eyes. Luo Jiun felt slightly relieved and followed closely into the tent. Once Li Lingchuan saw Li Moying, his faces showed traces of surprise. He had originally thought that based on past cases, after Li Moying's symptoms acted up, the entire condition would be extremely terrible. Including the fact that it had acted up in the Dark Moon Forest, they didn't have time to make much preparations, he should be at least half dead. But who knew, Li Moying looked like he was doing well. You can also listen on. Li Moying quietly laid on the beast skin and although he was unconscious, his complexion looked normal, his breathing was stable and the center of his eyebrows reflected a peaceful look. If he had not known about his condition beforehand, he would have thought that he was just sleeping. Li Lingchuan raised his eyebrows and stretched out his hand. He had yet to reach Li Moying before he was stopped by Mo Yi. Young Master Li, Master is very weak now so he cannot be disturbed. Please allow us servants to do the manual tasks such as carrying or taking care of him. Your Master's junior brother so your status is very distinguished. You would probably not have any experience in tasks such as taking care of others. A blunt but reasonable conversation. Most people would probably not insist further. But not only did Li Lingchuan not retract his hand, he retorted, how did the few of you take care of senior brother? As his subordinates, you didn't risk your lives to protect him? Senior brother is so heavily injured and yet the few of you are not harmed at all? You still dare to claim you know how to take care of others? All of you, get lost, you're not in a position to talk. Mo Yi, Mo and Mo San stood in front of Li Moying and refused to budge. Li Lingchuan's eyes flashed a sliver of coldness and the qi he released caused Mo Yi and the rest to turn pale instantly. They were just in the 5th degree realm but Li Lingchuan was a genuine 6th degree realm practitioner. Not only was Li Lingchuan's cultivation higher than them, he had alarming innate skills in terms of profound skill and cultivation method. If it wasn't for the fact that he had met the Avildor like Li Moying, in the South Sky region, he would be labeled as a super genius that could only be found in every 100 years. Get lost. You useless fools who cannot even protect your master, he shouted sternly. The oppressing power of high-level practitioners were extremely powerful. Every word he spat out felt like 1,000 grams of weight, weighing heavily on their chests, causing their blood to boil to the extent of spitting out blood. But Mo Yi and the rest didn't step back. Li Lingchuan started to worry. He had hurried over because he knew Li Moying was weak now and his soul damage was extremely critical. Once there were hiccups in his recuperation stage, it would lead to a long-term damage, and if it was serious enough, he might not be able to cultivate further. If he were to make some small moves, even if something were to happen to Li Moying, they would not be able to find any evidence. Li Lingchuan had thought that since Li Moying set off the rescue order, his subordinates should have been seriously injured so whatever he had planned to do could be easily done. He didn't expect that not only were Mo Yi and the rest not injured, they were loyally blocking his way. Now things took a turn and it was not as easy as he thought. If he were to take action, unless he killed everyone and not leave any witness, Otherwise, if the actions were to flow to the sect master's ears, he would get into big trouble. Li Lingquan's thoughts turned quickly as he let out a cold grin. How dare you block me? If it wasn't for you who didn't protect senior brother, how would he get injured? Men, drag these useless fools who got senior brother into trouble away. Whoever dares to resist will be counted as betrayal to the sect. Don't blame me if my subordinates don't show any mercy. He had pinned a charge on Moyi and the rest, so that he could get his men to hold them back. Even if his subordinates' cultivation levels were not as high as Moyi, but now that Li Moying was unconscious, if Moyi dared to resist against Li Lingquan, it would be counted as insubordination. By then Li Lingquan would have a legitimate reason to kill them all. Moyi and the rest realized his intentions and their faces turned pale instantly. They had never expected Li Lingquan to be so vicious and scheming. The few of them were willing to throw their lives away for Li Moying, but if Li Moying were to fall into the hands of Li Lingquan, what should they do? You can also listen on. Just at this critical moment, a clear voice echoed from outside of the tent. Stop! Who dares to touch Moyi and the rest? Everyone looked towards the door with query. The slender and graceful figure who slowly walked in was Huang Yueli. Even though she had constantly rushed around and refined armaments for 7 days continuously, her clothes were dirty and her face showed signs of tiredness. Her eyes were clear and penetrative, and there was nothing to pick on her dignified temperament. When Li Lingquan first looked at her, his eyes brightened. His vision was different from the rest. On first look, he could tell that this juvenile-looking lady was not simple. Luo Jiun, Mo Yi, and the rest fretted when they saw Huang Yueli. Huang Yueli appearing in front of Li Lingquan was not a good matter. Li Moying was still unconscious and he could not protect her. If Li Lingquan had wanted to use her to attack Li Moying, there was nothing anyone could do to stop him. The few of them used eye contacts to hint Huang Yueli for her to leave quickly. Even though their eyes were going to cramp up, Huang Yueli appeared as if she had not seen anything. Her footsteps slowly but steadily walked closer. Li Lingquan's gaze stopped on her, and as he watched her walk in front of him, his eyes reflected an undetectable interest. Who are you? Why did you stop my men from taking action? He looked at the immobile Li Moying, then looked at Huang Yueli, and when he opened his mouth to speak, he used an unsuspecting tone to test her. Don't tell me, you're one of the women who admires senior brother? Huang Yueli indifferently swept a glance at him and said, I am not. I am Li Moying's fiancée. What? Senior brother has a fiancée? Her words gave him a big shock. That's right. I'm Li Moying's fiancée, Mo Yi, and the other's future mistress. Li Moying is unconscious, so they must listen to my orders. Who are you to lay orders on other people's subordinates? Li Lingquan's eyes squinted as he stared at Huang Yueli for a while. He suddenly thought of something and slowly let out a smile. You are senior brother's fiancée? I think you must be thinking too much. The women who admire senior brother are plentiful. A woman like you, in terms of looks, you're just above average. In terms of innate skill, the distance is heaven and earth. He will be willing to get engaged with you? Do you think that since he's unconscious, you can pretend to be his fiancée? He was clearer than anyone on Li Moying's luck with ladies. The women who chased him were countless. Every other day there would be someone who claimed to be his fiancée, and without a doubt, every single claim was fake. This was one of the main reasons why Li Lingquan could not stand Li Moying. He was obviously the charming handsome man, but he paled in comparison when he stood beside Li Moying. In the eyes of those ladies was only Li Moying. However, Li Moying had an expression filled with coldness, rejecting all of them far, far away. He had broken countless hearts of these young ladies. Daughters from large sects with innate skills that high, looks that beautiful and their parentage so elegant. However, Li Moying could never find anyone suitable. How would he ever choose someone as common as Huang Yueli? Li Lingquan naturally categorized Huang Yueli as one of those who admired Li Moying. In order to stop him from bringing Mo Yi and the rest away, she had jumped out as an imposter. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli smiled slightly. Really? There are so many women who likes my Li Moying. But too bad, he's already engaged to me. So the other women have no chance at all. Li Lingchuan's eyes rolled upwards. When he didn't smile, he looked slightly sinister. He stared at Huang Yueli's eyes and shook his head. Miss, I think it's better for you to stop pretending. Did you think you're helping him? Li Moying won't thank you for this. When he wakes up and realizes that you're imposing as his fiancée, he'd be very angry. He has never been known to show tenderness to any woman. Huang Yueli pouted secretly, her heart gave a tingling feeling. Why did Li Moying have so many rotten romances? It wasn't only that blind lass, Murong Ni, who secretly admired him. There were always people who hinted that she didn't match up to him. What was wrong? If it wasn't Li Moying who pestered her first, she wouldn't even bother about him. But this was not the time to haggle over this. Huang Yueli shook off the distracting thoughts and calmly said, I'm not lying to you. Li Moying and I are absolutely fiancé and fiancée. I'm sure you know that Li Moying's biological father is the Emperor of South Yu Kingdom and I am the fiancé whom his father had selected. If you don't believe, you may ask Mo Yi and the rest. Li Lingchuan heard her clear and logical narration and turned his head suspiciously to glare at Mo Yi and the rest. Mo Yi immediately replied, Master had personally introduced third miss was his unwed fiancée. For the duration that Master was unconscious, we heeded third miss's orders. Li Lingchuan raised his eyebrows and had a surprised look. Mo Yi and the rest were very loyal to Li Moying. So even if it was a ruse, they would never succumb to randomly acknowledging anyone as their mistress. Since they have already spoken, then it should be real, but to be honest, I really can't tell which part of you could attract such a high-sighted man like Li Moying, and for him to personally acknowledge you as him fiancé, Li Lingchuan sneered. Huang Yueli's expression remained unchanged. For that part, I won't need junior brother, you to worry about that. But is that the attitude that you should use and talk to your future sister-in-law? Li Lingchuan started laughing when he heard that. Ha ha ha, you have got guts. Did you really think that just because of his parents' orders, you can get married to senior brother? I'll have you know that with Li Moying's status, his marriage has to go through the sect's consent. Based on your status and innate skill, there's no way you can be his proper wife. At most you'd be made a concubine. As a concubine, do you think you're worthy of me greeting you as sister-in-law? Listening to him ridiculing Huang Yueli, the expression on Luo Jiyun's face changed and he charged outwards. Don't you dare say that about sister-in-law. Senior brother has already said, Miss, you will get married to him. Li Lingchuan glared sternly at him. Looks like you've been bought over by this lass. As one of the direct inherited disciples from a reputable sect, greeting a country bumpkin as sister-in-law. Whatever next. Men, bring young Master Luo onto the ship and let him calm down. Reflect on your mistake. A few bodyguards surrounded and pressed Luo Jiyun down. Luo Jiyun had intended to resist, but Li Lingchuan released a strike of profound energy directly at his chest, causing him to spit out blood on the spot. This scene came as a shock to Huang Yueli. Li Lingchuan's cultivation wasn't bad at all. Looks like even if Mo Yi and the rest worked together, they would not be his opponent at all. Seems like Li Moying is in deep trouble this round. You can also listen on. Although Huang Yueli was worried on the inside, her face still showed calmness and her spoke in a gentle tone. Junior brother Li, you're not following the rules in this way. Although Li Lingchuan's smile was gentle, but his expression was totally cold. Miss you, I've already said, you're not qualified to greet me as junior brother. It's right and proper that I'm teaching my junior brother a lesson. It's not your turn to butt in. Hearing that, Huang Yueli's smile disappeared and she said coldly, I think the one who doesn't have the authority is you. Your senior brother is still here. If it was to teach junior brother a lesson, that should be his matter. Does he need you to meddle in his affairs? Li Lingchuan's gaze froze. Senior brother is currently unconscious, so I'm fulfilling my obligation as a senior brother. What I'm doing is for his own good. Even if senior brother awoke, he would not say I'm in the wrong. Huang Yueli raised her head and looked at him on equal footing. What if Li Moying has already awoken? What do you mean? Li Lingchuan paused momentarily. Huang Yueli replied, it is what is. Li Moying had already awoken earlier in the morning and it's because he's overly tired, So I specially fed him pills that can aid him in his sleep, so that he can recuperate in peace. However, we didn't expect you to suddenly appear. I had originally thought that since you're Lee Moying's junior brother, naturally you will make proper arrangements and not disturb him. But who knew, you took matters into your hands with no respect for him. The powder I've fed him is the respite powder. If you dare to touch him and he wakes up and flies into a rage, even I won't be able to stop him. Her face was peaceful as she used a calming tone to talk. The respite powder was a commonly seen tranquilizer, often used when a practitioner was recuperating from their injuries. It was an inexpensive first-level mid-quality medication. When this medication was taken, it would aid in sleep and hasten the speed in recuperation of wounds. The best part was no matter how noisy the surroundings were, it would have no effect on the patient. However, once there was external contact to the body, even if it was just a light touch, it would make patient to wake up in shock. When Huang Yueli said these, Li Lingchuan's brows indistinguishably twitched. His stare towards Huang Yueli became extremely sharp and cold, as if it was a blade shooting towards the space in the middle of her eyebrows. You're talking as if it's real. Did you think that based on those few sentences, I'd believe you? Whenever Li Moying's condition acted up, didn't he always require at least half a month before he wakes up? What you're saying was just to scare me off. Li Lingchuan's gaze turned swift and fierce, his profound energy emitting out. The huge oppression caused Luo Jiyun, Mo Yi, and the rest to turn pale. However, Huang Yueli didn't seem to have any adverse reaction. Her expression and talking were as per normal, as though she wasn't facing any sixth-degree realm expert, but just an ordinary person. She laughingly said, "Since you think I'm bluffing, why don't you go over and test it out for yourself?" Saying that, she turned, "Mo Yi, Mo San, all three of you, stop blocking the way." Although his recovery will be slightly affected by this lack of sleep, but once he boards the ship, he can continue sleeping. All of you please move away and allow junior brother Li to take a look. Otherwise he will think that you have caused the death of his senior brother. Her smiling eyes swept across them, and after a moment of hesitation, Mo Yi and the rest heeded her words and took 2 steps aside. Seeing this, Li Lingchuan's smile slowly wiped away. He gazed deeply at Huang Yueli, Mo Yi and the rest, considering and hesitating on his next step to take. You can also listen on. By right, Li Moying's soul should be damaged and he should be unconscious. But after Huang Yueli's deliberate narration, Li Lingchuan started to feel doubts. Because Li Moying's condition looked different from usual. In the past, after his condition acted up, his entire face would turn green and purple. Just one look and you would know that he was seriously injured. But today, he looked like he was just sleeping. This scenario had never happened before in the past. Huang Yueli saw that he didn't give any reaction, shrugged her shoulders and said laughingly, "Junior brother Li, didn't you think that I was lying? Then what are you hesitating for? Quickly go over. If he was really unconscious due to his illness, he shouldn't wake up no matter how you shake him." Hearing Huang Yueli said these, Mo Yi and the rest sweated profusely, anxious till their heartbeat nearly stopped. Master's future wife's guts was extraordinary. This type of words, she had dared to keep repeating. If Li Lingchuan was agitated by what she said and he really went over to touch Li Moying, then the entire scenario would fail, and by then, the few of them would have no place to hide. However, compared to their frightened looks, Huang Yueli's expression was calm and collected. A sarcastic smile was hanging by her mouth as if she was purposely provoke the other party. The more she acted in this way, the more suspicious Li Lingchuan became, and the more he couldn't get what she was up to. If she was really lying to him, he only needed to move one finger to expose her. This lass was just in first-degree realm, would she dare to make up such a big lie? But if it's true. To be honest, Li Lingchuan didn't have the guts to provoke the conscious Li Moying. Even if he was seriously injured, the minute he woke up, it was enough to intimidate whoever who was using the opportunity to stir things up. Li Lingchuan had long experienced several terrifying times when Li Moying flew into a rage. Li Lingchuan was hesitant and Huang Yueli became even more pleased with herself. "Mo Yi, please go and pack our things from the surroundings. I had asked you all to handle the scarlet-eyed bloodbat's corpses, have you settled it yet?" Don't forget to bring along those materials. Moa, don't forget the barbecue sauce that I gave you the other time. I took an entire month to marinate that one bottle, so if it's lost, we'd have nothing else to eat. Mo-san, please pack up the items outside the tent and check if the stretcher is tough enough. When you're carrying your master later, be gentler and don't awake him. Seeing that this ordinary little lass not scared of his own power, Li Lingchuan went into deep thoughts. He had never seen anyone being able to command Li Moying's bodyguards before. Wang Yueli actually managed to tame them? Could it possibly be that she really was Li Moying's fiancée and Li Moying was indeed just sleeping? If that was the case, he shouldn't go and disturb the tiger in its den, and since matters have yet to blow up, he should quickly pack up and leave. Just at this moment, the tent's hanging screen was pulled open. Second. Senior brother, don't be fooled by this slut, Yu Li. Her mouth doesn't contain any real words. This voice sounded extremely familiar and everyone turned to take a look. Murong Ni appeared at the entrance. Her entire face was filled with blood and she could barely stand. Her fingers were gripping tightly against the sides of the tent to stabilize herself and her eyes were filled with hatred, staring daggers at Wang Yueli. You can also listen on. Li Lingchuan almost couldn't recognize her. Murong Ni looked very different from her usual unruly but dazzling appearance. In his wildest dreams, he'd never expected the junior sister who had been pampered to the skies by everyone in the sect to appear before him in such a pathetic sight. Although his heart was filled with shock, as he was well known for not showing any expressions. So he merely creased his eyebrows slightly. Junior sister, what caused you to become like this? Anne. You know this Miss Yu? Is she really senior brother's fiancée? No. She's absolutely not. How would senior brother choose her? She's just another slut who is harassing senior brother. She took the opportunity and collude with Mo Yi and the rest when senior brother was unconscious, to harm me. Murong Ni started screeching. Second senior brother, look at how pitiful I am, to have been bullied by her. All these injuries on me are caused by her. You must help me to redress my injustice. Murong Ni fell onto the ground crying hysterically, at the top of her voice. That stance was as if she had met her family. But Li Lingchuan was indeed considered as her family. Although Li Lingchuan and Li Moying were on loggerheads, secretly fighting over the future sect master's position for many years, but towards the sect master's youngest daughter, they took good care of her. Li Moying was only giving face to the sect master, so he was tolerant towards Murong Ni's behavior. Li Lingchuan was different. He had secretly admired Murong Ni's sister, Murong Fei, for a long time, so in association, he treated this future sister-in-law well too. Li Lingchuan looked at Murong Ni's pathetic sight. He felt astonished and a little difficult to believe Murong Ni's words. No matter how he looked at this Miss Yu, she was just a first-degree realm practitioner. And since she came from a small country like the South Yu Kingdom, he estimated that she didn't have any good profound artifacts on her. On the other hand, Murong Ni was the daughter of a reputable sect. Her cultivation is much higher and she had a survival trump card. What ability did Wang Yueli have to bully Murong Ni to such a state? He frowned. Was it really this Miss Yu who did this to you? Why did she have the audacity to do this to you? Is she really senior brother's fiancée? No, I already said she's not. Murong Ni stamped her feet in rage. This vixen used some underhanded methods to seduce senior brother and almost caused him to die. In order to save her, senior brother was seriously injured by the magical beast and later on was the full moon's night. His symptoms suddenly acted up and his wounds on his back erupted. Senior brother was so seriously injured that since the full moon's night, he had been unconscious and have yet to awaken. Second senior brother, don't be hoodwinked by her. Wang Yueli's heart thumped wildly, chopping Murong Ni in several pieces. She had already revealed the happenings, so how could she continue to cheat him? Li Lingchuan's glare fell onto her at the same timing as his eyes glinted a hint of laughter. What Murong Ni said was apparently the truth. Li Moying had not awoken since the night of the full moon. In that case, Wang Yueli was telling him lies. He stared at that pretty face, his lips curled upwards, and he said in a low voice, "Miss Yu, I'm starting to believe that you are really Li Moying's fiancée." Your lies are very convincing, even I am almost cheated by you. Huang Yueli's smile didn't change. I'm cheating you. What I have said are the truth. It's not up to me if you choose not to believe me, you can also listen on. Since Li Lingchuan already knew in his heart the truth, naturally he wouldn't be swayed any further. He looked at the calm and collected Huang Yueli and couldn't help but feel some bits of admiration for her. Although this lass's cultivation wasn't much, her guts, however, was something above the others. As compared to those experts who were much higher levels than her, she didn't bat an eyelid when plotting her scheme, nor did she appear flustered when she was exposed, as if she had a high chance of success. This bearing was truly worthy of being the woman behind the king. It was no wonder that Li Moying had good foresight and chose her. Li Lingchuan couldn't help but stared at her a couple more times before he spoke. Indeed, I don't believe you. No matter what you say to cheat me, I'm not going to believe it. Be it true or false, I'll know once I touch him. Saying that, he couldn't care less about Huang Yueli's reaction and took a big stride forward towards where Li Moying laid. Mo Yi and the rest had just heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that Huang Yueli had Li Lingchuan fooled, but who knew the sudden appearance of Murong Ni turned the entire situation around. As Li Lingchuan walked nearer and nearer, everyone started to fall into despair. Looked like there was really no hope this round. Luo Jiun had long been held down by Li Lingchuan's subordinates, so he could only helplessly look at Li Lingchuan moving forward. He couldn't bear to see what will happen next, so he shut his eyes and waited for that moment to happen. But the laughter that he had expected to hear from Li Lingchuan did not surface. There was a sudden loud bang in the tent, followed by Li Lingchuan gritting his teeth as he said, "Damn it." Huang Yueli shouted at the top of her lungs, "What are you guys waiting for? Quickly take action. Mo Yi, carry your master and everyone else rush out of the tent." There seemed to be something weird about this scenario. Luo Jiun stared in astonishment as a row of traps suddenly arose in front of where Li Moying laid and Li Lingchuan had fallen onto the ground. Huang Yueli was holding a thunder flame ball in her hand and threw it directly towards Li Lingchuan's face. "I'd long said this, when you're in your grandaunt's array, that means you're in my turf. Trying to stir up trouble in an armament master's turf, you must be tired of living," she mumbled to herself as she pulled a face at Li Lingchuan. Although her words were pretty, but deep down in Huang Yueli's heart, she knew clearly that based on Li Lingchuan's power, she was not able to trap him at all. It was because Li Lingchuan had not expected her to secretly activate her traps and he was caught unawares. That was why he fell into her trap. Even so, they didn't have much time. Luckily, Mo Yi and the rest reacted very quickly. The minute they saw Li Lingchuan's figure falter and fell downwards, they took action immediately. Mo Yi rushed forward and dragging the stretcher, he flew towards the outside of the tent. Mo and Mo San coordinated with Huang Yueli's thunder flame ball and released their strongest attack towards Li Lingchuan. In a moment, flames filled the surroundings and the entire tent was blown up into the sky. Everyone knew they were not Li Lingchuan's opponent, so they didn't dare to engage in a long battle. After they have struck their moves, they turned and ran off immediately. When Luo Jiun saw this, he suddenly felt energized and the internal injury which was dealt by Li Lingchuan didn't hurt anymore. He immediately coordinated with Mo, cast aside the surrounding bodyguards and dashed out with Huang Yueli. Although their actions were fast, Li Lingchuan wasn't slow at all. At the very moment that he fell, he subconsciously noted that he had been schemed once again, by the innocent-looking lass. You can also listen on. Li Lingchuan had wanted to get back on his feet, but he suffered the attack of the thunder flame balls that Huang Yueli had threw out next. H had never expected Huang Yueli to throw out a 5th-tier profound artifact, and so many at one go. Adding on the obstructions of Mo and Mo San, all he could do was to defend himself. But this sort of attack could only stop him from chasing up to them, and not seriously injure them. So once the thunder flame ball's attacks had halted, Li Lingchuan's expression was filled with fury and he arose immediately. Huang Yueli's speed was the slowest amongst all of them. When Mo Yi turned back, he saw Li Lingchuan's shadow pouncing towards Huang Yueli and he couldn't help but shout, "Third miss, be careful." Li Lingchuan sneered, "Trying to escape? Just based on your 1st-degree realm speed, Are you able to escape? There's no woman who dares to play a trick on me, don't you even think of. Before he could complete his sentence, he suddenly thud and fell onto the ground again. And this round, he fell even more seriously than the previous time. The reason was because the previous time it was a small obstacle that tripped him, but this round. Li Lingchuan clenched his teeth as he raised his head, and in front of him appeared a large area of faint blue light array pattern. Before Huang Yueli started refining the armament, she laid a beast diversion array around the tent's surroundings, with the initial intent of preventing magical beasts from attacking Li Moying and the rest. But now, since everyone had ran out of the tent, she took the opportunity to activate the array and trapped Li Lingchuan in the boundaries of the array. As Li Lingchuan had not expected her to plan this, he used his fastest speed and chased them with his might. With such an incredible speed, the force that was used to bang onto the boundary of the array was no different from banging into a wall. Just thinking about it made one feel extreme pain. This scene left Luo Jiyun, Mo Yi, and the rest dumbstruck. After a while, Luo Jiyun spoke, "Sister-in-law. You are really too black-bellied and too resourceful. You can even think of this." Mo Yi spoke out too. Young Master Li doesn't seem to have taken such a big disadvantage before, and this round he had to fall in the hand of a woman whose cultivation level is lower than him by that much. I gauge that he should be mad with fury. Mo and Mo San laughed out loud. Huang Yueli's expression remained heavy. Don't be happy so soon. My array was not mean for defense, so if he spends some time on it, he will be able to break it. It can only stop him for a quarter of an hour. We must get on the flying ship immediately before he breaks out of the array and clear everyone on the ship out, and fly off. That's right, what Third Miss is saying is true. We must make haste. Quick, everyone follow up. Upon hearing Huang Yueli's words, everyone stopped laughing and hurriedly sped towards the flying ship. Li Lingchuan saw the direction they were running to and guessed what they were thinking. He felt a sense of urgency and fury. As he drew out his long spear, while attacking the array to break out, he couldn't help but to start cursing. Sly and cunning woman. Just wait and see, don't you fall into my hands. The rest of you don't even think of escaping. There is no way for all of you to escape today. However, his voice was blocked out by the soundproof features of the array, so it could not be heard from the outside. Huang Yueli and the rest had took the opportunity and rushed up the flying ship. There were few people on the flying ship and they were all brought over by Li Lingchuan from the sect. Some of they remained loyal to Li Lingchuan and started attacking the party. However, the powerful ones were trapped in the array along with Li Lingchuan, and those left on the ship were not the strongest. You can also listen on. Mo Yi and the rest settled the remaining resistance, and those remaining, although they didn't strike, Huang Yueli was worried that there might be some spies who had mixed themselves into the crowd. Mo Yi listened to her instructions and hesitated. Third Miss, this is a flying ship. The ship will require a number of crew. If we were to clear everyone, I'm afraid there is no way this ship will be able to proceed. Huang Yueli's glance swept past everyone on the deck and she casually pointed as she said, I don't trust these few people, you must make them leave the ship. The positions they are occupying are not important, I can arrange for someone to fill in their places. Don't worry, even if the flying ship was short of some people, it will still move. Don't hesitate any further, I can tell that. Li Lingchuan is going to break out of the array anytime now. On the campsite not too far away, the sound of the tremors vibrated strongly and the ground was in a mess. Apparently the array would not last for a couple more breaths' time and was going to be broken very soon. Mo Yi didn't hesitate further and hurriedly followed her instructions and chased those people whom Huang Yueli had picked, down the ship. The remaining people on board, quickly assume your positions and drive the ship now. However, it was too late. As a loud rumble sounded, Huang Yueli's array was broken to smithereens and a huge force caused the ship to vibrate. Go quickly. Huang Yueli clenched her teeth as she urged them. Li Lingchuan pointed his spear and snarled, Want to escape? Impossible. You will have to all stay behind. Whoever dares to fly the boat, when you get on, I'll kill you all. He sped forward and rushed towards the direction of the boat. The disciples had already prepared to start the boat, but when they saw the appearance of Li Lingchuan and heard his threat, Momentarily no one dared to move. Huang Yueli gritted her teeth and attempted to steer the boat herself. However, her speed was simply too slow. Li Lingchuan flashed and appeared in front of her, blocking her way. On his handsome face was no longer that fake, peaceful look. In replacement was a sinister look with a cold glint fixating his glare on Huang Yueli. Huang Yueli didn't attempt to run as she knew escaping was not an option. She stopped her footsteps and coldly said, "Junior brother Li, may I ask what can I do for you?" "Do for me? No need." Li Lingchuan's smile was icy cold. "I just realized that you and Li Moying are just as irksome. I believe now that you are really his fiancée." "That's good. Since the misunderstanding has been cleared, let's all go on our separate ways and find our own mothers." Li Lingchuan glowered at her. "It's too late for you to escape now. Since you've fallen into my hands, I will naturally take good care of you." "Who asked you to be Li Moying's woman? What do you say, if I were to sleep with you? When he awakens, will he directly be angered till he enters the state of qi deviation?" There wasn't a trace of panic seen on Huang Yueli even after she heard this threat. On the contrary, she calmly said, "Want to get me in your bed? I don't think you're quite there yet." When he heard what she had said, Li Lingchuan started laughing with rage. "I shall show you now if I have such an ability." Saying that, his pale cold fingers started to reach towards Huang Yueli's delicate face. But before his fingertips could even reach Huang Yueli, he suddenly felt a painful sensation on his fingers. Tilde 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 tilde. You can also listen on. Amidst the screeching, a finger drenched in blood flew towards the sky. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. It almost splattered onto Huang Yueli's face. She hurriedly turned her head to one side and avoided it. Following that, she heard a familiar, low-toned voice arising from her back. "Li Lingchuan, we've not met for several months. It seems that you have grown some guts and placed your designs on my woman? Looking for death." Even though this vocal sounded hoarse and melancholy, it was obvious that the owner had yet to fully recover as the feeling was different from normal times. But at this very moment, to be able to hear this voice that she had not heard for such a long time, an excited Huang Yueli covered her mouth and turned behind unbelievably. Li Moying's lofty figure appeared before her. There were signs of fatigue underneath his eyes and due to dryness, some parts of his lips started to peel. But that extremely handsome face dazzled and captured all of her attention. Li Moying slowly walked over and put his arm around Huang Yueli's waist. Lowering his head, he gave a peck on her face. Huang Yueli was caught unawares and received his kiss directly, her face flushing with shyness. What timing was this now? This shameless lecher, Li Moying, actually, calmly stole a kiss. And she hadn't seemed to allow him kissing her. But before she could protest, Li Moying had shifted his glance towards Li Lingchuan. "What? You want to get my woman into your bed?" Li Lingchuan felt a chilling sensation down his spine from that cold glance. "Senior brother, this round, you woke up really quickly." Li Moying coldly replied, "If I didn't wake up earlier, perhaps I might have lost my life, since even my fiancé have been watched by someone else. Misunderstanding. This was just a misunderstanding." Li Lingchuan's forehead slid down a few drops of sweat beads. Ever since Li Moying woke up, his vigor instantly reduced by a great deal and was showing signs of retreat. No one knew why Li Moying had such a strong overbearing force field. Even if Li Lingchuan thought highly of himself, felt that his power surpassed all the others and his innate skill excelled all others, but every single time he stood before Li Moying, he was instantly shortened by a head, completely unable to fight with her. Li Moying's glare was icy cold, a misunderstanding. Yes, that's right. Unfortunately, I don't care if it's a misunderstanding or not, I only believe in what I see with my own eyes. I will not let off any men who dares to harbor any designs on Leah. On account that we are from the same sect, I shall spare your life for today. Get off the flying ship on your own. Li Moying's put it simply, but his motive was to get Li Lingchuan to get off by himself. Li Lingchuan was the next talent in line, after Li Moying, and his existence was like a star waiting to be born. However, only Li Moying never gave him any face. Li Lingchuan's expression changed instantly. But he didn't dare to show any signs of resistance. It was because, based on Li Moying's temper, he was already showing mercy when he didn't kill him on the spot. Pressurized by Li Moying's cold stare, step by step, Li Lingchuan walked towards the edge of the flying ship. Suddenly, his footsteps came to a halt. Something was wrong, something was extremely wrong. He had rushed over with the intention of harming Li Moying while he was seriously injured, and earlier he had clearly offended the little lass that Li Moying obviously pampered. By right, he should have already stepped on Li Moying's bottom line. When he killed, he would never be soft-hearted. But today, he didn't make any moves. Why was this so? Could it be, although he had regained his conscious, his injuries had yet to recover, so he actually didn't have the energy to fight it out? You can also listen on. Li Lingchuan's footsteps slowed down considerably, and in his heart, this thought kept swirling around. Li Moying didn't bother about him and shifted his glance back to Huang Yueli. He held Huang Yueli's waist and turned her towards him. With her face facing him, he stretched out his arm and cupping her face, a pair of ink-black eyes focused entirely on her. Huang Yueli's face blushed fiercely by that pair of bottomless pupils and couldn't help but push against his chest. Hey, what are you looking at? Is my face dirty or something? Stop looking. Li Moying gave a gentle laugh. Indeed it is dirty, like a little cat, as ugly as can be. Can't you feel it for yourself? Huang Yueli immediately felt her rage flourish. This man was only cute when he was sleeping. When he was awake, he could make anyone throw up blood anytime. Did he know how to talk properly? She finally managed to save him and helped him escape the danger zone several times. Now that he was finally awake, not only did he show gratitude, he actually said she was ugly. Don't look if you think I'm ugly. Let me go. Huang Yueli stared at him. Li Moying's lips curled upwards and slowed leaned towards her. I'm not letting go. Although ugly, you are, after all, my woman, so I won't abandon you. His voice still sounded slightly hoarse, and when he spoke in his low-pitched voice, it contained another level of deep seduction, as if a small rock rubbing against the heart, causing Huang Yueli's heart to tremble. Subconsciously, she lifted her head and was sucked into a deep sea-like pupils. Those flawless features, his strong and deep presence could easily seduce any woman's heartstrings. Li Moying saw her expression of enrapturement, and his smile deepened. In the near distance, on the ship's railing, Li Lingchuan's footsteps had deliberately become slower, and even to a halt. He secretly turned to look at Li Moying and saw him and Huang Yueli in an embrace. He had never seen such a gentle expression before. That lass was indeed Li Moying's beloved woman. Li Moying's body stood tall and straight, the arm holding on to Huang Yueli's slender waist looked like it was full of strength. He didn't look like someone who had just regained his consciousness from a serious injury. Had he already recovered? Or was Li Moying trying to act tough, under his serious injury, so that he could cheat him to get off the ship? Looking at Li Moying nonchalantly kissing Huang Yueli, this made Li Lingchuan unable to get the meaning. Li Moying raised his head, and from the corner of his eye, his gaze swept past the immobile Li Lingchuan. Why? What are you still hanging around here for? Did you think I won't kill you? I'll count to 3, if you still don't get lost, don't blame me for not considering the fact that we are from the same Sect. 1, 2, 3. The 3 word had just came out when Li Lingchuan suddenly drew out his spear and pounced towards the direction of the duo. The tip of his spear was pointing straight at Huang Yueli's back. Li Lingchuan was considered as an unwavering man. Since he already knew that no matter how he guessed, he would not know the real answer, why not just directly try his luck? What's more, he had 90% confidence that Li Moying had yet to recover, otherwise he would never believe that Li Moying would be so kind-hearted. Li Lingchuan was fast as lightning, his powerful profound energy instantly unleashed. The person he was dealing with was the almighty Li Moying, whom was unmatched in a very long time. Li Lingchuan didn't dare to have any signs of neglect nor luck, hence when he struck, it would be his strongest killer move. It didn't take a blink of an eye before his spear tip almost reached the back of Huang Yueli. You can also listen on. Although his movements are fast, Li Moying was even faster. Although Li Moying's eyes were half closed, His arm abruptly tightened and pulled Huang Yueli behind his back. At the same time, his sleeve waved slightly towards Li Lingchuan's direction. The rigid spear was sent flying away. Li Lingchuan grasped his chest and moved backwards several steps, until his back banged heavily against the railing and came to a stop. Blood slowly dripped out from one corner of his mouth. That stream of blood looked especially contrasting against his pale white complexion. Li Lingchuan coughed and felt a dull pain from his chest. He knew several ribs had already been broken and he had also suffered a considerable amount of internal injury. His eyes were wide open as he couldn't believe and couldn't understand how his deduction could be wrong. Not only Li Moying awoke ahead of time, he had also regained 80% of his power. At this current state, he was completed unrivaled. Li Moying held Huang Yueli's slender waist and his arm stroked her back lightly to comfort her. At the same time, cold words spat out from his mouth. Li Lingchuan, if you wish to die, just tell me straight. Looks like my mercifulness towards you made you think I'm weak and can be taken advantage of. Since that's the case, he squinted his eyes and beneath that look, his murderous intent appeared. Li Lingchuan instantly shivered because that gaze of Li Moying's, he was more than familiar. Every time he looked at someone like this, within 3 breaths, that person would definitely shed blood within 5 steps. Li Lingchuan was so scared that without thinking, he immediately shot to the ship's railing and leapt off from there. 6th-degree realm practitioners had not attained the ability to fly, so when he jumped down from such a height, although he won't die, there was a 90% chance of incurring a serious injury. Even so, it was much better than losing his lift by the murderous gaze behind his back. On seeing that their master had fled the scene, Li Lingchuan's subordinates lost all their morale to continue the battle. Some of them followed and jumped down the ship while the rest who didn't dare to were all quickly subdued by Mo Yi. Hanging on Huang Yueli's face was a smiling expression as she turned and gently patted Li Moying's chest. You're still the powerful one. You've just awoke and managed to settle that weirdo. Speaking of this, what's his backing? Isn't he your junior brother? Why is it that he seems more like your enemy? Li Moying had just said one word before he suddenly stopped. Huang Yueli raised her eyebrows. What? Hemming and hawing like that, just speak directly. Li Moying continued to be silent. Huang Yueli curiously turned her head to take a look. She saw his face had turned pale white and sweat started trickling down his forehead. She turned pale with fright and shouted, Li Moying, what's wrong with you? Where are you feeling uncomfortable? But Li Moying still didn't reply her. His tall figure leaned against her and slowly dropped down. Both his eyes were shut tight and he slipped into unconsciousness once again. Huang Yueli used all her energy to support his body but she didn't dare to shake him so she could only softly call out his name. Master! How are you? Senior brother, wake up. The others anxiously rushed over and surrounded Li Moying. His fainting spell this time scared everyone out of their wits. Everyone brought him into the main cabin in a flurry and let him lie down. Luckily the living conditions in this flying ship was a lot better than the crude and simple tent in the dark moon forest. Li Moying would be much more comfortable lying down on the big and soft bed. You can also listen on. The profound lunar spirit mirror that Huang Yueli had refined was placed on Li Moying's chest once again. Li Moying's collar was slightly loosened and that piece of icy blue lit mirror laid quietly on his sturdy chest. The perfectly chiseled pectoralis major shone under the sunlight and looked especially alluring. Huang Yueli silently looked at him for a short moment and turned around to ask Mo Yi. What exactly is wrong with him? Why did he suddenly wake up but fainted again? Mo Yi explained, Third miss, there's something that you don't know. The profound lunar spirit mirror that you had refined is extremely effective, much better than the previous profound armament blueprint that I had seen. After Master had it put on, his complexion turned much better and the progression rate was also faster than before. We were guessing that if luck has it, he should be able to regain his consciousness before nightfall. Huang Yueli heaved a sigh of relief, as though the heavy rock weighing on her heart had been lifted. It's good that it's effective. So the reason why he regained his consciousness in time was because of the therapeutic effect of the profound lunar spirit mirror? I'm guessing it must be because Master could sense the dangers lurking on the outside world, and with the help of the profound lunar spirit mirror, he managed to wake up in time. But as he had yet to fully recover, he had forcefully unleashed his profound energy to attack young Master Li. It was possible that he had used up too much energy, which led to him fainting once again. Huang Yueli couldn't help but sighed when she heard this. Your guess should be correct. I have the same thinking too. It was apparent as she had witnessed with her own eyes, the confrontation between Li Moying and Li Lingchuan that happened earlier. Li Moying had indeed not regained much power, so if the both of them were to really start fighting, she gauged that Li Moying would probably not be Li Lingchuan's match. This was the reason why he chased Li Lingchuan down the ship. And Li Lingchuan didn't believe that he would recuperate that fast, so he tried his luck. Li Moying was a daring talent. He actually used all his remaining profound energy in this one shot and caught Li Lingchuan unprepared. His influence over Li Lingchuan was normally very deep, so Li Lingchuan was originally frightened of his. So after he was injured, he didn't had time to dwell upon this and hurriedly jumped off the ship to save his own skin. By now, Li Lingchuan should have thought things through and realized that Li Moying was bluffing. However, it's too late for regrets. With the speed of the flying ship, it was impossible for Li Lingchuan to chase up. Moreover, he jumped from such a high height, he was possibly seriously injured. This was what you called black-bellied and sinister, killing someone without shedding any blood. As Huang Yueli reminisced, her fingertips were feeling Li Moying's face uncontrollably as it went past his nose bridge and continued downwards. This man was extremely good-looking. Not only his features were beautiful like a painting, what was rarer was that he had a bearing of an emperor, who could naturally torment anyone. Such an aloof, arrogant person, yet he was only gentle towards her alone. Whenever she was in peril, he was always able to jump out without a care for himself, and used all methods to save her. Every single time, it was just in time. If it wasn't because she already had Mu Chengying in her heart, perhaps, she might have fallen in love with him long ago. As Huang Yueli absent-mindedly thought about it, suddenly her heart winced as she realized that Li Moying had been occupying her thoughts recently. Or she should put it this way, the image of the both of them were often entwined together in her thoughts, and many times, she would even mix up the events that the both of them had done. Was this her hallucination? Or was she too lonely? That was why her imagination was running wild. You can also listen on. Third miss, what are you thinking about? Mo Yi's voice echoed from behind. Huang Yueli snapped out of her thoughts and tried to shake those thoughts out of her head. She really shouldn't be considering these affairs of the hearts at such a time when everyone in the midst of fleeing. Mo Yi gave her a questioning look, puzzled as to why she suddenly went into a blank. Third miss, there are still a number of people who Li Lingchuan had brought onto the ship. Although it looks like they have given in and are obediently steering the ship, we cannot be sure that we are clear of any spies. The few of us will need to run through checks frequently. To leave Master here, Huang Yueli understood his meaning and immediately replied, please go ahead. Li Moying will be safe in my care. After Mo Yi and the rest left, Huang Yueli personally poured some Saint Spring water and tried to feed Li Moying the medicine refined by Liu Buyan. However, no matter how she tried to feed him, the pills kept rolling down from Li Moying's mouth. Huang Yueli tried several times and was still unsuccessful. She resignedly gave out a sigh. Seriously, you are already on the verge of recovery, why do you still refuse to take your own medication? On those days when I was refining the armament, Brother Mo Yi and the rest must have spent a lot of effort to feed you the medication. Saying that, she took a mouthful of Saint Spring water and holding the pill in her mouth, she lowered her head and pressed her soft lips against the man's elegant thin lips. This action of feeding medication was done repetitively over the past few days, so she had become very skillful and did not feel that anything was wrong with this action as she did it subconsciously. The only thing was, during the process of feeding the medication, she seemed to have felt Li Moying's tongue moving, and it seemed to be licking her tongue. However, when she stopped to verify the feeling, there was no action from Li Moying. It might be her misperception. Huang Yueli didn't dwell too long on this matter and continued to feed Li Moying all his medication. After she was done, she sat on the chair next to the bed. Even though it was the third day that he had lost his conscience, his facial expression compared to the previous days was a lot better. And this round, his breathing was stable, expression was peaceful, and his wound didn't rupture open. Everyone unanimously deduced that he should be able to regain his consciousness very soon. So they were not as anxious as before. After Mo Yi and the rest had completed their duties on the ship, they dropped by to check on Li Moying, and following that, each of them lodged an excuse to left the room, leaving only Huang Yueli to care for him. She didn't leave the cabin for the entire day, and for the entire duration, she busied herself with wiping off his sweat, feeding his medication, and changing his clothes. Mo Yi brought in the dinner for them once it was ready. The entire process lasted till the middle of the night, and this caused Huang Yueli to be extremely tired. In this entire duration, although Li Moying was the one injured, it was Huang Yueli who felt the impact most and used up most of her energy. First, she fell from the cliff and almost ended up dead. Next, it was followed by Li Moying suffering from a serious injury, so she had to carry him on her back for the entire route down the mountain. After that, they met with the bunch of scum, the werewolf mercenaries. She practically didn't have a night of sleep as she had to guard against their plots. Just when she had gotten rid of the mercenaries, Li Moying's illness suddenly acted up, and after killing everyone at the campsite, he continued his killing spree in the forest. After she had pacified Li Moying, without any rest, she hurried to the spirit jade mine vein to obtain the profound lunar jade just to refine the profound lunar spirit mirror for him. The entire refining process took 3 days and 3 nights, and she didn't get to shut her eyes at all. Based the entire duration, she had no opportunity at all to take a good rest for the past 5 to 6 days. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli was strung up tightly like a taut bow, always under the greatest pressure. Now, upon seeing that the few of them had already got out of the danger zone and Li Moying's condition started to stabilize, she could finally heave a sigh of relief. In an instant, she relaxed all her sensed, and the sense of tiredness crept over her as her eyelids started to get heavier and heavier. Finally, she huddled herself against the back of the chair, her head prodding lower and lower, and fell into deep sleep. In the middle of the quiet night, in the darkness, the man on the bed opened his eyes. That pair of dazzling peach blossom eyes, when it first opened, it was a bit lost. But very quickly, it became sharp and clear, and his gaze instantly fell onto the young lady beside his bed. Looking at her tired composure, the man's eyes flashed past a glint of tenderness. He stretched out his hand and arranged the messy strands of hair on the lady's forehead before he carried her lightly and gently put her onto the bed. The young lady seemed to have felt something, and with a en in her throat, her head subbed against the man's body uneasily. "Leah, be good." He lowered his head and gave her a quick peck on her face. The young lady obediently stopped moving. The man smiled lightly and let her down gently on the bed. Following that, he climbed onto the bed and held her soft body on his crook of his arm. He shut his eyes shortly after that. This was his first time sharing a bed with someone else. He had initially thought he would not be used to it. But the truth was, his entire body relaxed as he whiffed in the faint fragrance from the young lady's body. Shutting his eyes, within an instant, he was fast asleep. And it was a dreamless night. The next morning, just as the sky shot out its first ray of light, Huang Yueli awoke. She slowly opened her eyes and momentarily, she couldn't make out where she was. After she had clearly seen herself lying on the bed and beside her was a man, she had a shock. She gently rubbed her eyes and shut her eyelids for a while before reopening her eyes. However, it was the same scenario as before. Lying beside her was still a man. An incomparable handsome, unsurpassed charming devilish man. She shockingly sat up from the bed and frustratingly patted her own face. In her mind, she kept trying to recall what had happened last night. Last night, she took care of Li Moying for the entire night. After that she got too tired, so she crawled up to the back of the chair and fell asleep. Her memory up to this point was very clear, but how did she climb up to Li Moying's bed then? What's more, she was like an octopus, clambering all over his chest and slept for the entire night. Could it be that she didn't know she had the habit of sleepwalking? Just as she was frustrated over this, the man on the bed had silently opened his eyes. Looking at the little fox break out into different expressions, One moment she was frowning, the next she was biting her lips, and followed by pouting. The confused, melancholy and helpless expressions caused him to burst out into laughter. Huang Yueli was startled. Before she could react, her shoulders were locked by the man and pressed down on the bed. Li Moying's strong and masculine body frame immediately covered her. His arms were propped against the sides of her body as he slightly lowered his head and looked at her oppressively. Huang Yueli blinked. You're awake? Li Moying's lips curled into a smile. That perfect lips curvature looked extremely sexy under the first glimmer of dawn. Yes, good morning, my Leah. Gee. Good morning. Huang Yueli subconsciously replied. You can also listen on. Li Moying lowered his head and inched nearer to her. His body also lowered by several inches and his powerful chest stuck close to Huang Yueli's body. In a low voice, he expressed, "It was hard on you for taking care of me for the past few days. Last night. Did you sleep well?" The vocals of this man was filled with a husky yet-to-wake-up voice, deep and magnetic. Huang Yueli hadn't noticed that she was blushing. Not bad. Let go of me first. I want to get up. As she felt the man getting nearer, her heart set off an alert and she hurriedly pushed him aside in an attempt to make him get up. However, Li Moying remained immobile and continued to half lean against her, gently taking a whiff of the fragrance in her hair. Li Moying, get up. Huang Yueli used a bit more strength and shot him a furious glance. However, compared to Li Moying's strength, that little force of hers was only enough to scratch an itch. Li Moying laughed with a hint of evilness. Why the hurry? It must have been tough for you to take care of me for the past few days, so rest a little while more. Be good and lie down, close your eyelids. She would be in danger if she really shut her eyelids and laid properly. Huang Yueli rolled her eyes at him. All right, stop these nonsense. You've just woken up. Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere? Quickly lie down and rest properly. I need to get up and let Mo Yi and the rest know that you've already awoken. She gave a push again but he didn't budge as she felt enraged. Li Moying, move aside and let me get up. Li Moying lowered his head. I can get up. But I'm injured and I feel a loss of security, so I need you to give me some comfort. Comfort. Huang Yueli instinctively felt something was up. As expected, Li Moying's lips curled upwards. A kiss. Kiss me voluntarily and I'll let you get off. Huang Yueli rolled her eyes at him. What on earth goes on in your head? Knock it off. I'm not fooling around, I want a kiss. I've saved you several times so I'm only asking for a kiss as compensation. That isn't too much, right? Li Moying insisted. Huang Yueli raised her eyesight and stared at his insistent black pupils and her heart trembled. After some time, she responded, all right, I do feel gratitude for you saving me, and I will definitely think of a way to repay you back. But you cannot just ask a girl to repay you using her kiss. That is very immoral. In what way is it immoral? You are my fiancé. When have I ever admitted that I am your fiancé? Huang Yueli denied flatly. Li Moying smiled slyly. That expression resembled a cat which had stolen a fish. What? Have you forgotten? Yesterday when Li Lingchuan appeared, you admitted in front of him repeatedly that you are my fiancé, and you claimed that you are Mo Yi and the other's future mistress. Although I was immobile, but my consciousness was very clear. So I heard those words loud and clear. Huang Yueli stared blankly and felt her head swelling, following by her blood rushing upwards, scorching her entire face as red as a tomato. Was there a need to be so deceptive? Li Moying actually heard what she said. She took a deep breath and tried to explain her way out. You don't misunderstand, all right? I was only using a plan of convenience. If I didn't say that at that point of time, would Li Lingchuan have let off Mo Yi and the rest? If not for the safety of all the other Mo brothers and junior brother Luo, I won't say such things blindly, so please don't misunderstand me. You can also listen on. Misunderstanding? You say that it's a misunderstanding? When Li Moying heard her said this, his expression turned a little unsightly. Only heaven knew that while he was in an unconscious state, the joy he felt when he heard Huang Yueli declaring that she was his fiancée while she blocked him off from the enemy. At that moment, How he wished he was able to regain his conscience and pull her into his embrace to kiss her. That was why he was able to regain his conscience in time eventually. The feeling of excitement remained in his thoughts, but this lass was now saying it was just a misunderstanding, and that she was saying it without any further thoughts. Huang Yueli started to feel guilty from his stare. This, she didn't know how to continue. Even though Li Moying had saved her on several occasions, she felt touched by the gestures and was willing to give up everything to repay him, even if it meant giving up her life. She wouldn't even hesitate. But if it meant for her to agree to marry Li Moying, that was impossible, as in her heart laid the shadow of another man. Looking at the hesitant expression, Li Moying suddenly felt flustered. Even though normally, this lass was always quick to reject him, but at this very moment, he had just returned from the doors of Hades, so he was feeling especially unsettled, even more so than any other times. At this moment, he desperately needed to hold on to something to verify the relationship between the both of them. So as Li Moying looked deeply into the eyes of Huang Yueli, he suddenly forcefully held her chin, lowered his head and passionately kissed her. His kiss was not gentle at all, to the extent of being brutal. His lips heavily crushed that pink-colored lips and he biting slightly on the tips of her lips. When he heard Huang Yueli's low moans of pain, he felt even more excited and kissed even more passionately than before. It was as if he was trying to use this kiss to pass on all his despair, uneasiness, entanglement to this conscienceless lass, to let her know clearly the scorching feelings he had for her. Huang Yueli initially pushed against Li Moying's chest in a bid to escape, but under the strong clampdown of Li Moying, she had nowhere to hide and could only accept his forceful kiss. As time went by, Li Moying's kiss gradually turned from intense to gentle. Huang Yueli didn't know what happened to her as her head was dizzy and subconsciously, she started to respond back to this man. This man's hug, the intimate exchange of their lips and teeth, made her feel at ease. Just as the two were kissing passionately to the state of oblivious, the door was suddenly interrupted by a bang 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 knocking sound. "Sister-in-law, have you woken up? How is senior brother? Were there any problems last night? I've been worried, so I'm coming in to take a look at him." After Luo Jiyun knocked, he didn't wait for any response, simply opened the door and walked right in. When he entered the room, he probed his head and looked towards the bed and stood dumbstruck at the original position. On the spacious big bed was a couple with their clothes in disarray, and they were hugging each other passionately in a tight embrace. The blanket had fallen onto the floor from their entanglement. Huang Yueli had originally immersed herself into the kiss, but when she heard Luo Jiyun's voice, she unexpectedly regained her senses, started struggling again. From the corner of his eyes, Li Moying had already spotted Luo Jiyun's presence, and although he was displeased with Huang Yueli's resistance, he didn't have any intention to let anyone see a live performance, so subsequently he still reluctantly released Huang Yueli. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli hastily turned around, pulling along the blanket that had dropped onto the floor and coiled it around herself, hiding her head into it. That position of hers looked exactly like an ostrich. Li Moying amusingly shook his head, tempted to tell her that even if she hid herself, Luo Jiyun had already saw what happened earlier, so it was pointless to do so. However, to prevent the domestic violence displayed by his fiancée in front of his junior brother, he judiciously shut his mouth. Compared to the embarrassment felt by Huang Yueli, Li Moying was completely unaffected. The blanket had been stolen away completely by Huang Yueli and he had nothing to cover his body with. Yesterday night, for the convenience of applying medication, he was already half-dressed. Earlier, when they were entangling on the bed, in the process of dilly-dallying, the remaining of his clothes were completed disheveled. Now, he was in a state of half-nudity and his fair but sturdy chest muscles were portrayed in the open air. On his chest were 2 strokes of scratches which was left earlier by Huang Yueli when she was resisting him. It looked especially ambiguous. Li Moying did not feel any hinge of awkwardness and calmly tidied his clothes. Following that, he shot an unfriendly glance towards Luo Jiyun. "Don't you know how to knock before you enter? Where have your manners gone to?" The minute Luo Jiyun opened the door, he already knew that he had committed a huge offense to have bumped into the scene of intimacy between his senior brother and future sister-in-law. This, he would probably be chopped into several pieces by his senior brother. But he felt indignant for himself. Li Moying was unconscious due to his heavy injuries and Huang Yueli was taking care of him. According to natural train of thoughts, both of them should be sleeping fully clothed and couldn't be more pure than the blanket. Who knew that the injured patient had awoken and was full of vigor and vitality, oppressing the one who had been taking care of him onto the bed? Senior brother was simply a beast. But he absolutely had no guts to spill out these words of ridicule. Luo Jiyun shrunk his neck and carefully explained, "Senior brother, I did knock earlier but you were simply too busy so you didn't hear it." Li Moying calmly replied, "Even if you did knock, did your sister-in-law or I allow you to come in?" Luo Yijuan helplessly reflected upon his actions. "Senior brother, I'm wrong. Please be magnanimous and forgive me this once." Li Moying non-committally humphed and spoke, "Why are you still sticking your head around here, trying to see something? Didn't you see your sister-in-law is suffocating inside the blanket?" Luo Jiyun just realized that he had committed another wrong. He shouldn't continue to stick around. He hurriedly replied, "Senior brother, please continue being busy with sister-in-law, do continue. I'll make a move first." Luo Jiyun hastily walked towards the door and just as he was about to step out of it, he suddenly retracted. With a terrified expression, he still pressed himself to open his mouth. "Ugh, that. Senior brother, junior brother, I have to remind you. You've lost a lot of blood and had fainted for around 7 to 8 days. Your body is still weak and you have yet to take your meals, and you're already so busy. It's really not good. Do you want to have your breakfast first before you continue?" Luo Jiyun felt himself was so great and honest advice was always unpleasant to the ears. Even if Li Moying would be angry, but as his number one best junior brother, he ought to remind his senior brother. You can also listen on. Hearing that, Li Moying's eyebrows twitched and almost flew into a rage. But before he could say anything, Huang Yueli had already threw open the blanket and furiously retorted, "Luo Jiyun, what rubbish are you sprouting? What busy? Speak clearly." Cold sweat formed on the back of Luo Jiyun as he hurriedly gave a dry laugh. Yes, sister-in-law, you're not busy. Please take your time. I'm leaving now." Saying that, his soul's seam have oil applied to it and he quickly slipped away. The speed was as if there was a demon chasing him from behind. Huang Yueli almost threw up blood. Judging from Luo Jiyun's tone, it felt as though the both of them had some hidden secret. Although it's true that the both of them displayed amorous actions, but that should blame Li Moying, the shameless man, and had nothing to do with her at all. Li Moying lowered his head and saw her frustrated look and his spirits lifted up. Although this little lass was indecisive in staying together with him and often spoke of things which he didn't like to hear, but at least the man beside her now was only him. Besides being in his embrace, she didn't need to go anywhere else. He would not allow this lass to have any chance to fall in love with anyone else. In this way, sooner or later, this little fox would become his. Huang Yueli felt Li Moying's gaze and her face suddenly turned hotter. This man's looks was simply too outstanding. For a man to look like this was a type of sin, especially when his distance was so close and just focusing all his attention on her made her heartbeat started thumping faster and faster. The curves on Li Moying's lips broke into a smile and he leaned in closer to her yet. "Leah, what are you thinking about? Did you feel that it was a waste to have Jiyun break the momentum? Tell me earlier, don't worry, no matter how much you need, I can satisfy you and I will definitely take on the burden willingly." Huang Yueli couldn't wait to give him a tight slap. The idiom, "a dog's mouth emits no ivory," was exactly describing him. What's the talk about need and satisfaction? Did he really think she was some simpleton little rabbit and not understand his underlying meaning? She rolled her eyes at Li Moying and said, "Stop sprouting rubbish and quickly get up. Mo Yi and the rest had been very worried about you, and I guess that they had not slept the entire night. Let me go and call them in and at the same time, get you something to eat." Saying that, she flipped around, got up from the bed and left the room in a few quick steps. This time, Li Moying didn't stand in her way. Because he had some matters that he needed to inquire from Mo Yi and the rest He didn't want to let Huang Yueli find out about it. Not long after Huang Yueli left, Luo Jiyun, Mo Yi, Mo and Mo San knocked on the door before entering. Luo Jiyun's face displayed some ambiguity and sneakily checked behind Li Moying's back. Senior brother, has sister-in-law really left? Li Moying leaned against the bedhead and replied lazily, yes, she really left. Do you want to check? Luo Jiyun quivered and hastily shook his head. No need, I was just casually asking. Casually. Lo Moying raised his eyebrow, but there was no other expression on his face. But Luo Jiyun knew he was slightly unhappy. As for why he was unhappy, it was obvious that it was because he was always joking around with Huang Yueli. Li Moying was the typical hoe before brothers ever since sister-in-law came into the picture. He as a junior brother had degraded to the bitter cauliflower in the vegetable patch. Li Moying took one glance at him and said, what happened during these days when I was unconscious? Mo Yi, we'll start from you. You can also listen on. When Huang Yueli left the room, she went over to call on Mo Yi and the rest. After the few of them had entered Li Moying's room, she turned around and walked to the kitchen to see what was there to eat. Unfortunately, the kitchen on the ship was very small and not much food was prepared. There were only some barbecued pieces of magical beast meat. This type of oily food was not suitable for a patient who was just recuperating from a serious injury. Huang Yueli had no choice but to cook personally. Firstly, she minced some tender chicken meat and adding some spiritual herbs and Saint spring water, she stewed a small pot of minced meat porridge. After that she found a small bag of flour and made a tray of crystal steamed dumplings. Huang Yueli's cooking skills had always been good. The rationale behind it was purely because of the control of fire. She had outstanding innate skills in the fire attribute, and this directly resulted in her top-notch skills in cookery. However, the number of people who had tried her cooking was extremely little because there were few who were worthy to let her cook for them. In her past life, there was only Mu Chengying. In this life, there was an additional person. Smoke curled upwards, her actions were skilled and elegant, as though it was a hazy painting scroll. As the porridge was cooked using the Saint spring water, so when it was cooked, the fragrance was extremely strong as the smell slowly drifted out. When Huang Yueli brought the food and cutlery to the room, the door was still tightly shut and the few of them were still conversing. She couldn't make a decision to knock and enter or to wait outside. Just at this moment the door was suddenly opened and Luo Jiyun ran outwards. His mouth was drooling as he stared at the porridge in Huang Yueli's hands. Sister-in-law, what did you make for senior brother? Isn't it too fragrant? I also want to eat. Huang Yueli rolled her eyes at him. None is for you. Why? Sister-in-law, you cannot be so biased like this, isn't it too obvious? Why is it that senior brother can eat but I cannot? I am also your partner who had already fought alongside with you for the past few days. Huang Yueli replied simply, he's injured. But I'm injured too. Your skin is too thick, just a little injury, you won't die from it. Stop your superfluous words, help me bring the porridge in. Luo Jiyun took over the tray and puzzledly asked, Sister-in-law, why are you not bringing it in to senior brother yourself? Huang Yueli shook her head, you are in the middle of discussion, I'd better stay away for the time being and not listen in on your conversation. Help me look after Li Moying and make sure he finishes all the food, do you understand? Oh, Luo Jiyun nodded. When he brought in the tray of food into the room, everyone's gazes concentrated on the tray that he had brought in. It was because that porridge and the steamed dumplings' fragrance was simply too tempting. Everyone instinctively swallowed back their saliva with their eyes staring at the tray of food. Only Li Moying didn't look at the porridge. Instead his gaze went straight beyond Luo Jiyun. Following that, he discontentedly frowned. Why didn't she come in? Although he didn't say it clearly, everyone knew who he was referring to. Luo Jiyun repeated what Huang Yueli said, word for word. Li Moying snorted coolly, and although he didn't express any speech, his heart was filled with discontent. What was she up to? He was talking to his subordinates, what was there to shy away from? He didn't have any secrets that he needed to hide from his own woman. That lass's refusal to enter was obviously trying to distance herself away from him, really. Deserved to be kissed. As some charming scenes flashed in Li Moying's mind, he licked the corners of his lips and commanded Luo Jiyun, bring it over. You can also listen on. Luo Jiyun held out the tray slightly. Li Moying stretched his hand outwards to receive it, but there was nothing. Not knowing when, Luo Jiyun had held back the tray. Li Moying's cold glint turned towards him. Luo Jiyun gave 2 dry laughs and said, Senior brother, this, the food that sister-in-law made smells wonderful. At one glance, you know it tastes yummy. Can you share some with us? Li Moying kept silent and only glared coldly at him, sending the chills down Luo Jiyun's back. Shortly after, Luo Jiyun couldn't bear this huge pressure and totally lost his fort. He obediently passed the tray over. Senior brother, I was only joking. But this porridge and dumpling, you really can't share a little with us? I just wanted to taste a little. Li Moying received the tray and using the spoon, he drank a mouthful of porridge. The other hand was already holding up one dumpling and bringing it to his mouth. An indescribable delicious texture slowly spread inside his mouth, the faint scent infiltrating his individual taste buds. Li Moying couldn't help but shut his eyes. He wasn't very particular in terms of food, but tasting the dumpling that Huang Yueli had specially made gave him an indescribable sense of contentment. No matter what type of delicious fare he had taken in the past, totally became passing clouds in front of this taste. Li Moying kept silent, and as his slender fingers stretched out once more and grabbed another steamed dumpling, his action was slow and graceful. Even if the action of using his fingers to hold the dumpling was coarse, but when he was the one doing it, it was still pleasant to the eye. Luo Jiyun could only stare at him, and the dumpling in his hand. His eager eyes looked as if he was about to pounce to grab the dumpling. Li Moying seemed to sense his gaze, and after he swallowed the second dumpling, he gave him a charitable look. Why? Do you want a bite? Luo Jiyun nodded his head furiously. Not only me, Brother Mo's and the rest also want. Although Mo Yi, Mo and Mo San didn't make a sound, the looks on their faces had told the truth. Even after Lo Moying swept them a glance, his fingers stretched out and took a third dumpling. At the same time, his voice slowly rang, want to eat? Find yourself a wife. This is what my Leah made for me, so naturally it belongs all to me. Don't even think about it. When he said my Leah, his expression looked extremely cocky. That look really deserved some punches. In actual fact, if he wasn't Li Moying, Luo Jiyun would have pounced up and punched him in the face. Damn, did he needed to be like this? He let them smell the food but refused to let them eat. It was evil enough, and Li Moying had to purposely tempt them into thinking that they had an opportunity to have a bite. But he cruelly crushed their last hope. Luo Jiyun could only stared widely at Li Moying chewing the dumplings one after another, and very soon that tray of steamed dumpling were all finished. Following that, Li Moying took up the spoon and started taking the porridge. The fragrance filled the entire room. Luo Jiyun could feel his drool dripping as he cursed at least a thought times in his heart. What was so great about having a fiancé? Showing off your love is very glamorous. TSK. Luo Jiyun was also an innately skilled and handsome genius. If he wanted to find a wife, wasn't that an easy task? The only thing was, to be able to find someone as perfect as sister-in-law. There was probably none at all. When he thought about this, Luo Jiyun's face crashed downwards again. You can also listen on. As Li Moying gleefully took his porridge, the sweet taste melted in his mouth. Accompanied with various envy, jealousy, and hatred glares as side dishes, this meal was extremely delightful. Just as the grudges had reached the peak, he finally finished his meal. Li Moying slowly wiped his hands and said, "Where did we stop earlier?" Continue. Luo Jiyun's face was bitter with unspoken criticism. Senior brother, you are already full, but the rest of us are still hungry. Look at your gleeful smile, was it really okay? Luo Jiyun didn't speak a word, but Mo Yi and the rest were not like haughty as him and continued the topic earlier. With regards to the matter that had happened when he was unconscious, Mo Yi and the rest had already reported what had happened to Li Moying. When he heard the outstanding performance of Huang Yueli, Li Moying didn't show any sense of shock. On the contrary, he reflected a simple smile. His little fox had always been that outstanding. No matter what she did, it wasn't something to be surprised about. But his smile didn't last for a long time, only a couple of seconds, and quickly his expression sunk. The sect had definitely received my call for help, as this flying ship had always been parked in the sect. So Li Lingchuan could not have rushed over from any other place. However, the person who drove the ship over was not the sect's elder but a junior like him. This matter is just too weird. I dare say, something must have happened in the sect. Hearing that, everyone's expressions stiffened. Luo Jiyun replied, if that's the case, the duration when senior brother had left the sect was slightly longer. But I had just departed before the start of the month. I've heard from Master that some sect from the West Sky region was coming to pay a visit. Because of that, I almost couldn't leave. But I have no idea what happened after that. A sect from the West Sky regions. Which sect is that? Luo Jiyun shook his head. I didn't pay much attention. At that time, I thought it wasn't something that mattered since there were often frequent visits among the big sects. Li Moying kept silent for some time before he decided, looks like I must make a trip back to the sect. Change the direction of the flying ship and go back to the sect directly. But Master, your injuries have not fully recovered. If we were to return to the sect and you have to make a move again, then, Moyi hesitated. Li Moying replied, no matter. Anyway, even if the flying ship were to fly at the fastest speed, returning back also needs a few days. Now that I have this profound lunar spirit mirror, my soul has stabilized considerably and my recovery has hastened. These few days are enough for me to recover to at least 80% of my original power. Mo Yi was still worried, but as he thought about it, he didn't dissuade any further. Only Luo Jiyun still had his doubts, and wanted to speak but stopped on second thoughts. Little Wu, speak what you have on your mind. Li Moying couldn't stand it anymore. Luo Jiyun hemmed and hawed, senior brother, I don't know if I should say this but I'm really worried. I'm not sure if junior sister had what happened to her. After all, I'm the one who brought her out from the sect, and now that I didn't bring her back, I don't know how furious will Master be. Yesterday, after the vigorous battle with Li Lingchuan, they only single-mindedly thought of bringing the unconscious Li Moying and run for their lives. No one had remembered Murong Ni at all. It was until Li Lingchuan was forced to jump off the ship and after they had steadied their emotions when Luo Jiyun suddenly recalled that he had left their junior sister in the tent. He couldn't calm himself down the entire night as he pondered over this. You can also listen on. Even though Murong Ni had a crafty and unruly temper, her character was of poor quality and had done plenty of offensive things to Huang Yueli. She was still everyone's junior sister, and was merely a 16-year-old girl, so naturally Luo Jiyun felt that he had some responsibility towards her. Especially yesterday when Murong Ni had ran into the tent, her entire body was covered in blood. It was obvious that she had been beaten up by Huang Yueli, but they didn't know the extent of her injuries. If she was indeed heavily injured, and to make matters worse, she was left along in the inner zone of the Dark Moon Forest, then Luo Jiyun realized that he would not be able to bear the responsibility if anything had happened to her. Which was why he struggled for a long time and finally he couldn't stop himself from bringing up this matter. Once he spoke out, Li Moying's face darkened and a terrifying chill surrounded all of them. Even the air seemed to become frozen in that instance. Don't mention anything about her in front of me, he spat the words out through his clenched teeth. Luo Jiyun cowered upon seeing his anger, but he mustered up his courage and continued, Sir. Senior brother, I know she had provoked the scarlet-eyed bloodbats which indirectly caused sister-in-law to fall off from the cliff, and she had challenged sister-in-law several times. All these have made you very angry. I too feel she had done wrong. Even if she had to kneel down in front of sister-in-law to apologize, she deserves it. But she is after all Master's biological daughter. If anything untoward were to happen to her, how are we going to account to Master? Account? Lo Moying's face expressed a cold smile, the chilling glint in his eyes made everyone tremble in fear. From how I see it, it's Murong Ni who should give me an explanation. Don't get yourself involved in this matter anymore. Even if Murong and I were to die in the dark moon forest, it's something that she deserve. If Master were to ask about it, I will take responsibility for it. It has nothing to do with you. B. But Luo Jiun attempted to continue his persuasion. Li Moying had already turned around coldly, and he got down from his bed and left in a few big strides out of the room, leaving the rest behind. Luo Jiun wanted to go after him but was held back by Mo Yi. Young Master Luo, Master is really angry now. Please don't add any more oil to the fire, otherwise. If you were to really make him fume up, you'd gain nothing out of it too. Sigh. Luo Jiun gloomily expressed, junior sister is still young and thoughtless, so if we want her to do anything to compensate, it should be fine. But we shouldn't just leave her there like that. What if Master was to fly into a rage? What would happen to senior brother? Even if it was sister-in-law, she also wouldn't want senior brother to split off from the sect, right? Mo Yi shook his head and said, young Master Luo, there are things you didn't know. When third Miss fell off the cliff, it wasn't because she missed her footing. She was pushed down by Miss Murong. What? Luo Jiun's eyes turned wide. How can it be? Why would she do such a thing? Mo Yi continued, absolutely right. Otherwise, how would such a careful person like third Miss suddenly lose her footing and fell off the cliff? And when third Miss was refining the armament, Miss Murong knew that her disruption would cause third Miss to go into the state of chi deviation, and yet she intentionally attacked the array. To be able to do such things, wasn't the purpose obvious to want third Miss to end her life? But, perhaps she didn't do it on purpose, because she didn't know the severity. This kind of words, do you believe it yourself? Mo Yi patted Luo Jiun on his shoulder. Anyway, you already know third Miss's position in Master's heart. Miss Murong had attempted to harm third Miss so many times, this has already passed the border that Master has set. The fact that he didn't kill her personally was on account of the sect Master's face. You still expect him to go back and save her? Absolutely impossible. You can also listen on. Luo Jiun hung his head disappointedly, his face pale white as if he had suffered a fatal blow. How did things become like this? Junior sister was very adorable when she was young. Although her character was a bit exaggerated, but I had never expected her to do such vile things. Mo Yi advised, you may know a person for a long time without understanding her true nature. Miss Murong had been spoilt rotten by you bunch of seniors, so this lesson should be good for her. Sigh. Seeing him still sighing away, Mo Yi continued, young Master Luo, don't worry. Actually nothing much will happen to Miss Murong. When young Master Li jumped off from the ship, Miss Murong will definitely go and look for him. Luo Jiun stared blankly for a moment, then set his mind to rest. That was true, that second senior brother, Li Lingchuan, had always laid down everything for the two young misses of the Murong family, so how could he leave Murong Ni alone? Saying that, even if she had to suffer a little, her life should be in no danger. On the deck, Huang Yueli stood alone against the railing, looking far away into the distance. The flying ship was shuttling in between the clouds and the speed was pretty fast, flying past the vast forest. There had been 10 days since their arrival before they entered the inner zone. Yet in just one night on the ship, they were about to leave the dark moon forest. It was very quiet on the ship. No one was walking around. Only the cold mist from the clouds brushed against her face and it felt a little wet. Huang Yueli stood there silently, her heart was feeling sentimental. Many years ago, she had crafted a flying ship and with a man, they cruised around. However, it was all in the past now. She instinctively stretched out her finger and touched her swollen lips, which was still a little painful. Lo Moying seemed to have a habit of biting people. Every time she provoked him and he couldn't bear to punish her, he would only vent his anger by biting her gently on her lips. This habit was just like Mu Chengying. These few days, they had met with various mishaps, which led Huang Yueli to be fully occupied. Now that everything was safe and the surroundings had quietened down, she suddenly realized that recently, something was wrong with her. She seemed to be too concerned about Li Moying. This man had a pair of mesmerizing eyes like Mu Chengying, a strong and overbearing character as Mu Chengying, an innate gift which was exceedingly high, and even some of his little habits. This gave Huang Yueli a sense of illusion, as if Mu Chengying was always by her side, and had never left her. This sweet illusion allowed Huang Yueli to slowly sink in, and unknowingly, they had become very close. Towards the embrace from this man, she didn't resist, and even towards his kisses, she would frequently give a response. Especially the moment when Li Moying pounced towards her to protect her with his life in Master Yun Tian's cave. At that moment, she had truly been touched by Li Moying. Sometimes, Huang Yueli thought she was really going crazy. No matter how much Li Moying was like Mu Chengying, they were entirely different people. Just because they look alike, how could she even betray Mu Chengying, as though she was possessed? But they were really too alike, to the state that at some point, she was unable to differentiate between the two of them. Huang Yueli heaved a deep sigh in an attempt to get Li Moying out of her mind. Mu Chengying, the #1 exponent of the soaring heavens continent, where was he now? Was he still in Sky Emperor City, or had he made a breakthrough in these 10 over years? By his side, was he still surrounded by the women who lusted for him? Why is it that when someone asked if person A and person B are the same person, I would be unable to speak out clearly? You can also listen on. Just as Huang Yueli was letting her imagination roam freely, a scorching warm chest plastered against her back. Without waiting for her response, a pair of sturdy arms held her around her waist and locked her into an embrace. Leah, why are you stoning here alone? Why didn't you send me the food personally? A familiar low-pitch hoarse voice rang beside her ear, with some sense of temptation. Huang Yueli shockingly turned around. Li Moying? The man showed a sign of unhappiness at her shocked expression. Why this shocked expression? Besides me, who else would it be? Huang Yueli shook her head. Nothing. Have you finished your discussion with Mo Yi and the rest? Earlier, she really did have a misperception because Mu Chengying had the exact same habit of suddenly hugging her from behind when she was in a daze, leaving her with no chance of hiding. It was obvious that she had thought too much. Li Moying felt that the little lass in her embrace didn't feel too right, and after staring at her for a little while, he continued, there was nothing much in the first place, so the discussion ended quickly. Actually, you didn't need to stay away, there was nothing that I have to hide from you. Huang Yueli shrugged her shoulders, but I have no interest in your sect's matters. Saying that, she attempted to pull away from Li Moying's arms, but that man's strength was huge. After expending some effort, she was still unable to get away. Li Moying, let go of me first. It won't be nice if we were seen by other people, okay? Instead of releasing her, Li Moying held her even more tightly after he heard what she said. What's there to be afraid of? The people on this ship, who would dare to talk nonsense? Besides, it's entirely justified for me to be hugging my fiancé. Can your face be any thicker? Huang Yueli was exasperated. No matter how black-bellied and craft she was, or how witty she was, every single time she encountered this overbearing, senseless, black-bellied man, no matter what move she made, it all ended up in defeat. Li Moying coldly snorted and his glance fell upon her delicate little face. His voice went dangerously low. Leah, I feel that something is wrong with you today, you seem to be pulling a distance away from me. Why? Mo Yi and the rest told me that when I was unconscious, you were even more anxious than them, taking care of me personally to the extent of not even leaving more than a step. Why is it that after I have awoke, you are trying all means to avoid me? When did I avoid you? This is all your misconception. Don't frame me. Huang Yueli bit her lips as she explained. How was she going to explain all these? The awoken Li Moying and the unconscious Li Moying were obviously different. When she was taking care of the unconscious him, she could say that it was to repay him for saving her, but if she were to continue entangling with the conscious him, this would send her into an abyss of entanglement and confusion. Li Moying's hand on her slender waist became tighter and gave her a pinch on her waist. Huang Yueli felt pain from the pinch and softly gave a sigh. Li Moying released his grip slightly, but his arm was still held around her waist, not letting go. Huang Yueli knew that even if she struggled, she was not able to get away. So she might as well not move. In this way, she could hypnotize herself to hide in this embrace because this man was forcing her to, and not out of her own will. In actual fact, only she alone knew that Li Moying's broad chest was only gentle to her, and it gave out an illusion of a strange sense of familiarity. That overbearing presence left her feeling extremely relieved. You can also listen on. Li Moying saw that she stopped struggling and his mood was instantly lifted, still embracing her in arms for some moments. The both of them gazed together at the misty clouds as a streak of morning rays peeked out from the clouds, faintly discernible. After some time, Li Moying spoke out, "In 1 more hour, 100 miles northwards, we will be entering the boundary of the South Yu Kingdom. You'll alight from the ship when time has reached." Huang Yueli was startled and gave him a surprised look. "I alight from the ship at South Yu Kingdom, only me?" Li Moying nodded, "That's right. I must return to the sect directly and cannot stay with you. My apologies, Leah." He looked at Huang Yueli apologetically. An indescribable feeling grew inside Huang Yueli. She had never expected that Li Moying would take the initiative and suggested the separation. What's more, it was at such an unexpected moment, so sudden, and it had caught her unaware. In actual fact, she should be feeling happy over this, as Li Moying would no longer pester her. She would no longer be caught in a dilemma and her emotions would not sway because of his overbearing yet gentle ways. Her heart already belonged to someone else and it shouldn't flutter just because of Li Moying's proximity. However, the truth was, upon hearing Li Moying telling her to alight from the ship, it wasn't happiness that flowed into her emotions but rather frustration and unhappiness surfaced, similar to the feeling of being abandoned. Heavens knows, Li Moying really wasn't anyone to her and she had never accepted him, so what was there to feel uncomfortable about? She took a deep breath and quickly hid the fluctuations of her emotions before affirming, "All right, I understand. I had intended to alight when the ship arrives at South Yu Kingdom and I still have a lot of other things to work on, so I am unable to go to your sect with you. Anyway, I'm not a disciple from your sect, so if I, as an outsider, were to go over, it would make things difficult for you, right?" Li Moying thought she was angry and quickly tried to explain. "Leah, I don't have any intention to abandon you, and you're no outsider. You're my fiancée. In future, if you visit my sect, I guarantee that everyone will show you the due respect. It was only the appearance of Li Lingchuan yesterday that I realized that something might have happened in the sect, so I must hurry back to take a look. The problem is we are still unaware of the entire situation and I'm worried that there may be potential dangers. If I were to bring you along and something happens to you, I will never be able to forgive myself, so I can only let you stay in the South Yu Kingdom for now. At least if it's within the kingdom, no one would dare to play punk with you. After I have ascertained that nothing has happened in the sect, I will immediately come over to look for you." After Huang Yueli heard his explanation, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Most the unhappiness in her heart momentarily dissipated. Following that, she immediately spurned herself. What was she feeling happy about? Li Moying's constant worrying for her and his reluctance to give up was something that she should be vexing about instead. She bit her lips lightly and replied softly, You don't need to look for me, I'm not concerned at all. It would be best if you don't come." When Li Moying heard that, fury started burning up within him. He turned her around and locked her shoulders before trapping her cherry lips, not wanting to hear any unpleasant words coming out from her delicate lips. This kiss came threateningly, almost causing Huang Yueli to stop breathing. By the time she was released, she finally realized that her arms, unknowingly, had wrapped around Li Moying's neck and was in a position where she was obediently waiting to be kissed. You can also listen on. Li Moying raised his head slightly and locking her arms in front of him, he said in a love-hate tone, "You little thing with no conscience, every day you must conjure different ways to drive me up the wall." Huang Yueli was vexed to the peak. What happened to her? Why was she easily settled with just a kiss from him? She used her might and pushed Li Moying from advancing. "You're too much, I've told you that you cannot just kiss me without notice." Li Moying raised his brow. Although he was rejected, but he was not upset. Because in that earlier passionate kiss, Huang Yueli had unknowingly accepted it, which deeply delighted him. And he had heard from Mo Yi that when he was unconscious, Huang Yueli had shown different ways of protecting him. This little lass must be feeling shy. That right, this little fox was just 14 and had yet to reach the marriageable age, so to show resistance towards relations between the two sexes was perfectly normal. Anyway, what he had were time and patience, so he need not push her too hard now. He can slowly, bit by bit, tear her down and digest her up. That would be another type of feeling. As Li Moying thought of these, he released his grip slightly and tried to amuse her. All right, don't be angry. You'll turn ugly when you are angry. These few days must have tired you out, right? Go rest a little in the cabin. When we have reached to South Yu Kingdom, I'll wake you up. Huang Yueli nodded and turned to leave. South Yu Kingdom, capital. A lavish carriage went through the city gates, and as it traveled along the bustling and wide road, the sound of clopping against the ground was heard. The carriage speed was extremely fast. The surrounding vendors nearby were not able to avoid in time and were sent reeling onto the ground. It was only when the carriage reached the doors of the royal palace before it came to a stop. The palace guards frowned, with an unpleasant expression. For many years, there was no one who had dared to rush head into the doors of the royal palace. Even a revered minister such as the valiant Marshal Marquis would stop their carriage 3 miles before the palace gates. However, the person inside the carriage had not only stopped short of a few steps in front of the palace doors, and was still seated comfortably inside the carriage, showing no intention to alight. Who on earth was it who could be so arrogant and despotic? The Imperial Guard commander stepped forward and interrogated, "Who is that? How dare you rush towards the doors of the royal palace? What punishment do you think you deserve?" The coachman had no intention of answering them. Instead, he stepped down from the carriage and, bowing courteously, he lifted the curtains. Behind the curtains peeked out a dainty hand. Following that, a young lady slowly descended. Her looks were dainty, and an air of elegance eluded from her. She pursed her lips as though something was upsetting her. You, the Imperial Guard commander formed a guess from one glance. The coachman impatiently whipped him, retorting, "Are you blind? This is our 7th princess. Why aren't you sending someone to inform Her Majesty?" The Imperial Guard commander hurriedly knelt down. "Greetings to 7th princess." The news that the 7th princess had returned quickly reached the ears of the empress. When she heard the news, she agitatedly stood up from her seat, her eyes seemingly shedding some tears of joy. "My little 7 is finally back, finally back. I have been waiting for such a long time." Mo Jun had been paralyzed in bed for so long. Until now there are no signs of recuperation. If little 7 is still not bad, I really have no idea what to do. Quickly, bring the 7th princess to my palace, and inform the crown prince of the return of the 7th princess. You can also listen on. The 7th princess, Li Shuer, was brought to the empress's palace immediately. When the empress saw her, her tears couldn't stop flowing. Little 7. Anxiety spread all over Li Shuer's face, and when she saw the empress sobbing, she hurriedly rushed up to help her up. "Mother, what happened? Stop crying. When I received your letters, it wasn't stated very clearly. What exactly happened? Why did royal brother suddenly get injured, to the extent of rupturing his meridians? In the South Yu Kingdom, who else would be able to hurt him?" The empress choked and, fighting back her tears, receiving a silken handkerchief from the palace maid, she simply briefed the happenings as she dabbed her face. "It's a long story. Till today, I still find it unbelievable. That day, at the peach blossom banquet held by the Empress Dowager, the more Li Shuer heard, the more shocked she received as her eyes grew exceedingly large till her eyeballs almost dropped out from its sockets. Mother, you, say it once again. Who did you say injured royal brother?" The empress was unable to suppress her hatred. Who else? It's the second prince that the hussy had given birth to, Li Moying. Li Shuer was still in a state of shock as she blinked her eyes. She felt that she must have misheard somewhere along the line. Mother, you are saying second brother injured royal brother? Am I hearing things? How can this be possible? Second brother had always been weak from birth. Not only can he not cultivate, what's more, wasn't he about to lose his life anytime? Where on earth would he have such abilities to injure royal brother who was in the defensive profound realm, 7 stage? The empress clenched her teeth as she spoke. His no wastrel. He had all of us completely fooled. In actuality, his cultivation was so high that not only did he injure your royal brother, even the imperial tutor was inflicted serious damage. He had rested for half a month and it was only these few days that he recovered slightly. How? How could this be? I must still be dreaming. Seventh princess pinched herself hard on her thigh and immediately shrieked in pain. I'm not in a dream, don't tell me this is for real. The empress responded, I too wish that this is not real, but alas, this matter cannot be truer than a pearl. Your royal brother is now severely injured. Not only is the medical institute not able to cure him, even the divine doctors from our neighboring countries whom I had painstakingly invited, are able to cure him. Saying to this point, the empress started to be agitated and grabbed hard on Li Shuer's arm. Shuer, your royal brother said if we brought you back here, perhaps you will have a way to save him. Is this true? Do you really have a way? Your royal brother is now depending on you. If you too do not have a way to save him, then he's really a goner. Li Shuer frowned and patted the empress's hands. Mother, please don't fret. Your daughter will not leave my royal brother like this. But, you mentioned that second brother had suddenly become a top-notch pugilist, and even injured royal brother and imperial tutor. This is preposterous. Sigh, you little lass. It's better that you take a look at your royal brother with your own eyes. By then, you will realize what had happened. Li Shuer followed the empress into the sleeping chambers behind. Upon opening the door, a piercing alcoholic smell whiffed out, mixing with a strange sourish smell. The odor was unbearable. Li Shuer subconsciously covered her nose and frowned. The empress used her hanky to cover her mouth and said, Morjuan, why have you started drinking again? You can also listen on. The room fell silent, no one answered. The empress sighed inwardly, her feelings weighted down. Ever since Li Moying had severed all the meridians in his body, the crown prince's cultivation had dropped from heavens to hell, and he was totally unable to cultivate at all. The minute he tried to summon his qi, all the meridians that were severed summoned excruciating pain, to the extent of fainting of the spot. Because of this, the emperor and empress had sourced for all the renowned doctors. However, everyone's conclusion were the same. With such a serious injury, they would need the bone vessel replenishment pill, a 5th-grade pill, which could extend and replenish the arteries and veins before he could be cured. And within 3 months, if they were unable to find this bone vessel replenishment pill, he would be deemed paralyzed forever. Not even considering the ability to cultivate, he might even be paralyzed and confined to the bed for the rest of his life. Even though this pill was not expensive, it was extremely rare. The empress had sent her aides to surrounding countries to search for this pill until today, she had yet to be able to find it. In the end, she could only send someone to the Sky Cloud City to see if they had any other avenues. The problem was, the entire journey to and fro would take at least 2 months, and they might not be able to find the pill. When the crown prince found out about this, he was crushed entirely. He would drink continuously every day while lying on the bed, and making himself completely drunk, using alcohol as an avenue to escape the reality of becoming paralyzed. As a mother, the empress felt indescribable pain tearing at her heart when she saw the crown prince in this state. Thinking back to the days when the crown prince was full of mettle and was the #1 genius of the South U Kingdom, his resolutely powerful prince had always been held to the skies. All the ladies in the country thought it would be the ultimate glory to be able to be married to him. But now, not only was he rejected by Huang Yueli, even the person whom he had always looked down upon stole his love away. What's more, Li Moying had not only stolen away his fiancée, he had easily defeated him as though he was crushing an ant, in front of everyone. Besides that, he had viciously maimed him. Not only did the crown prince need to suffer from the pain and torture from his injuries, the thing that he could not stand was his pride and face was entirely stepped upon by Li Moying. Now, who would still remember him? Li Morjuan? In the entire South U Kingdom, it was now widely known that Prince Yu Wang's elegant pose during the Peach Blossom Banquet, Prince Yu Wang's absolute power and handsome looks, and his overbearing love and fury for a beautiful woman. What about Li Morjuan? Although the emperor had yet to decree the imperial edict to depose the crown prince, but in everyone's eyes, he was no different from a dead person. The Empress called out a few more times and there was still no reply. Instead there was only clear shattering sounds of wine flasks dropping onto the ground. She could only cry out, "Morduan, mother is coming in. Stop drinking. Take a look at who's coming in. It's little Seven, she's back. Haven't you been waiting for her return? Now that she's back, there's hope for you, so stop being despondent." "What? Little Seven is finally back?" A surprised and happy cheer echoed from the room. Li Shuai rushed into the bedside and looked at the Crown Prince, paralyzed on the bed with a disheartened expression, as she unbelievably covered her mouth. This royal brother of hers had always been high-spirited, having an elegant and graceful carriage. He was also known as a handsome youth in the Celestial Light Academy. But now, he had this half-dead look, as though he had already lost all hopes for the future. Even though she had heard the Empress saying this earlier, but to see it with her own eyes, the impact was much stronger by several-fold. Within her heart, Li Shuai flew into a huge rage. You can also listen on. Royal brother, how did you end up like this? What exactly happened? Li Shuai's face was filled entirely with shock. Crown Prince stared at her and speaking through his clenched teeth, every single word hissed out from the gaps in between his teeth. Li Moying. It was entirely Li Moying's fault that I became like this. I must quickly recover and think of ways to kill him, and grind his bones into ashes. Oh, that's right, there's another person, and that's Bai Ruoli, that slut. If not for her, I wouldn't have ended up in such a terrible state. Li Shuai stood dumbstruck. Bai Ruoli? The person you're talking about is Bai Liu Feng's daughter, that trashy third miss at Valiant Marshall Manor? That's her. Crown Prince venomously hissed, she's no trash at all and she's now at Qi Profound Realm, 9 level. What's more, she had long been in cahoots with Li Moying, making me wear the green hat, that fickle woman. It was all the Crown Prince's own fault that he was the one who refused to admit the engagement initially, fully intending to marry Bai Ruoqi instead. And this entire thing had nothing to do with Huang Yueli at all, but Crown Prince would never think in this way. In his wishful thinking, he had chosen Huang Yueli but she had refused the marriage with him. To make matters worse, she had gotten herself engaged to his biggest foe Li Moying. This was her betrayal to him. Li Shuai's face flashed hints of viciousness. Wasn't it just the Qi Profound Realm 9 level? What's so great about that? Royal brother, don't worry. Just nice, I have here with me a bone vessel replenishment pill. It will be able to treat your meridians. As for those cheap sluts, whoever dares to go against us will only await a tragic end. Another night had passed. The sky was slowly breaking into dawn. A huge flying ship gradually descended on the wilderness of the South Yu Kingdom's outskirts. That scene was witnessed by the surrounding civilians and caused a huge commotion and many spectators to surround nearby. In a small country like the South Yu Kingdom, there had never been an appearance of a flying ship, to the extent of not even hearing about it. Only seasoned practitioners had only seen a sketch of the flying ship from a painting and had never encountered the real deal. Even so, all the spectators only dared to see it from afar, not daring to go any closer. It was obvious that to be able to own a flying ship, it would naturally be some shocking peerless expert. Who would dare to risk offending such a powerful person and go nearer to take a look? On the deck of the flying ship, Li Moying personally sent Huang Yueli down from the ship. The both of them walked alongside on the deck all the way to the ramp before they stopped. You, both of them turned towards each other at the same timing and spoke out. After a moment of astonishment, Li Moying's lips curled upwards, the sharp blossom-shaped eyes showed a hint of gentleness. Leah, what were you going to say? Huang Yueli pursed her lips and said in a low tone, nothing, then I'm leaving now. Li Moying stared at her, and said in a dissatisfied tone, what? Are these really what you wanted to say? Huang Yueli nodded, yup. Is there really nothing else? Li Moying was extremely discontented, continued his unforgiving questioning. Huang Yueli looked at his arrogant expression and suddenly felt it was slightly comical. Such a cool and overbearing man, in front of others, he held an aloof and desolate look, but in front of her, he was actually very cute. Her heart softened and thinking that since it would be some time before they met again, so she put down her proud facade. You have to take note of your own safety. I know your power is very strong and you're not afraid of any danger, but it doesn't hurt to be more prudent. You never know when the ship will overturn in a moment of negligence. By then you'd have suffered a loss. You can also listen on. One more thing, make sure you always carry the profound lunar spirit mirror on you. The wine that I fermented with the Saint spring water, you must drink it every day. Although the effect is not that obvious now, but if you persevere, it would definitely be advantageous. Another thing is during the night of the full moon, you must never be alone. The pills that divine Dr. Liu had refined, remember to take it on time. If the accident like what happened a few days ago, happens again, it will make everyone worried about you and your body is also not able to take the stress from this. Oh yes, any idea what happened to Li Lingchuan? Although he is a 6th degree realm practitioner, even if he jumped from the flying ship, he should not die from it. He will definitely go and look for you, so you must take caution. Huang Yueli had only intended to bid him with one sentence, take caution on everything, but who knew once she started, she suddenly worried about plenty of other things. So she started to brief about this and that, and unknowingly, she had said a bunch of stuff. Li Moying looked at her as his smile grew wider and wider. Sensing the man's gaze, Huang Yueli suddenly brought herself to a halt, looking very embarrassed. All right, that's about it. I'll just stop here for now. Hey, why are you staring at me for? And you keep chuckling. What's so funny for you to keep laughing? Li Moying couldn't stop himself from laughing out loud, but when he saw Huang Yueli's utterly discomfited look paired with her eyes rolling up, he gave out a stifled cough and finally stopped. I was smiling because I thought you were just too lovely. Huang Yueli pouted her lips and ignored him, so Li Moying hurriedly explained himself. It's true, Leah. I just discovered that you're actually very meticulous and virtuous. You had already thought of everything for me. In future when we get married, you'd definitely be a thoughtful wife. I feel that I'm the luckiest man on earth, so happiness shot up to my head and I was smiling all ears because of that. Lucky. Lucky your big head. When did I agree to marry you? Huang Yueli stomped her feet, feeling that her top of head was going to shoot out fumes very soon. Li Moying mumbled, didn't you? You were obviously admitting it in front of everyone else that you're my fiancé. That was just an advantageous ploy. How many times do you want me to repeat it? Huang Yueli glared at him. Li Moying could only snub his nose and replied, all right, an advantageous ploy. He was plotting in his heart to turn a drama into reality. What's more, their engagement was not fake. Anyway, he should just register the fiancé status first before they actually went further. By the time Huang Yueli had accustomed to his presence, how would she be able to fly out of his palms in future? Upon seeing that he had admitted his mistake, Huang Yueli pursed her lips and said, Ian, as long as you don't sprout rubbish. Then I'm really making a move now. Good. Before she could complete her sentence, Huang Yueli felt a pulling sensation from behind. Li Moying had pulled her into his embrace and lowering his chin, he teased smilingly, just going to say goodbye in this fashion. Leah, you seem to have forgotten something. What? Huang Yueli looked at the peerless appearance that had gathered in front of her, and felt slightly faint. Li Moying replied, when couples bid farewell, don't they always end with a goodbye kiss? Goodbye. Kiss. Huang Yueli suddenly retracted her thoughts and retorted, kiss what goodbye? I told you already, we're not a real coup. Millimeter and mum. When he heard the words that he didn't like to hear, Li Moying lowered his head hastily and used his lips to stuff the words back into her mouth. However, this kiss only lasted briefly. Li Moying lowered his head, their lips barely touched with a half-hearted attempt. The cool and sexy lips and a pair of delicate and tender pink lips had briefly touched each other and came apart. You can also listen on. This action disappeared in time. Huang Yueli was barely aware that she had been forcefully kissed again and had yet to express her displeasure, and it had all ended. Li Moying gently let her go and said, this is considered as bidding farewell. Shameless. Huang Yueli glared. Li Moying gave a perfunctory expression as he gave an demonic grin. On the handsome face showed signs of devilish glints which eluded indescribable sexiness. Huang Yueli puckered her lips and lowered her head. Li Moying released the arm that had restrained her and in a low voice, he reminded, "All right, it's late already, I shouldn't keep you here. Quickly go back and have a good rest. Wait for me, I'll definitely be back to look for you." Huang Yueli thought to herself that perhaps she might not stay in South Yu Kingdom for long. By the time Li Moying came to look for her, he might not be able to find her. But she didn't tell him her thoughts and simply nodded before she turned around and descended from the stairs. If she cannot be found and the connection had been broken, perhaps it wasn't a bad thing after all. As Huang Yueli thought about this, her heart flashed an indescribable sense of disappointment. As she reached the last rung of steps, she couldn't help but to turn around to take another look at Li Moying. Li Moying raised his brow as he said, "What's wrong? Can't bear to part with me?" Huang Yueli shook her head, "You're too narcissistic. I just wanted to ask, Brother Mo Yi, what's up with him?" She raised her finger and pointed towards Mo Yi who was standing nearby. Ever since she had started walking from the deck, Mo Yi had been following her footsteps. Initially, she thought Mo Yi was following Li Moying and didn't put it to heart. But she didn't expect that once she got off the ship, Mo Yi actually followed her. Li Moying explained, "Mo Yi will follow you and be responsible for your safety. Otherwise I'll be worried when I am not by your side." Huang Yueli was dumbstruck and felt touched in her heart. This man had really considered everything in her best interest, but there's no need. I'm in the South Yu Kingdom, what dangers could there possibly be? At most it's just that crown prince and Bai Ruo Qi, those clumsy clowns. I can handle them alone. On the contrary, you're going to the Sect and who knows what dangers is lurking over there. Let Mo Yi stay with you instead. Li Moying shook his head, "Listen to me. Let Mo Yi stay with you. All right, I have to continue with my journey, I'll make a move first." Saying that, the flying ship's stairs slowly retracted and the ship slowly rose as it stayed afloat in the sky. He simply left Mo Yi on the ground. Huang Yueli cannot help but shook her head, knowing she was unable to reject him. This man was always like this. When he treats someone well, he would never allow any form of rejection and the other party must accept his kindness. Besides, even if she refused, Mo Yi would still follow her in secret, to fulfill Li Moying's order. She could only turn around and conveyed, "Brother Mo Yi, in this duration, I will have to trouble you again." Mo Yi lowered his head and in a respectful manner, "To render my services for third miss is something that your subordinate should do." Huang Yueli nodded and together, they walked towards the direction of the city. Hanging lowly among the clouds, the flying ship hovered in mid-air, in no hurry to fly away. Li Moying leaned against the pole and as he watched that slender figure slowly walked far away until her shadow had completed disappeared into the city before he raised his head and softly commanded, "Let's start on our journey." Huang Yueli entered the city and directly returned to the valiant martial manor. Inside the manor, lights lit up brightly. And outside the entrance of the manor, the traffic flowed unendingly, bustling with noise and excitement. There were many rich visitors, and in their arms were gifts of all sorts, delivering the gifts to the doorstep with an adulate expression. You can also listen on. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.